Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto 100-year quest in a fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Sniper Artist and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. At the Valley of the End. A hero. A hero's description has always been changed over the course of time and space. Some were strong but incredibly greedy men. Some were compassionate but naive teenagers. Some were strong and sexy women that fought till the ends of the earth. Some were old and wise beyond many through years of experience. Uzumaki Naruto, the 7th Hokage of Konohagakure, was a combination of the second and fourth explanations. At a young age, Naruto was always naive to the things around him. Never in his life did he expect the villains of his village actually had good intentions. All he wanted to do was fight and be loved. He was always hesitant with making such difficult decisions. And this was his cost. Here he laid on the ground next to his fallen friend Uchiha Sasuke. Both were tired out of their minds, and exhaustion consumed them both fully. Never in his life did he expect his best friend to try something ludicrous like attempting the destruction of a village that loved him. He let his anger control his actions and like Naruto, he paid the terrible price. The battle that had happened at this valley would be something most would call legendary. Momentous moments after the other, flashing lights from both of their most powerful techniques clashing throughout the area. Explosions and chaos was the only thing that could describe such a battle. Such was the fight of two men whom were beyond the level of Cage. Naruto turned his head to look at the man he once considered a friend and remembered the words he had said to him. Even if we do end up dying, at least we'll no longer be Uchiha and the Kyuubi. Not burdened by any of that, we'll be able to truly understand one another in the next world. Those were the exact words he'd said to him. After all this time, he still thought of him as a friend. Naruto didn't understand it at all. Maybe this was the cost of trying to be a hero. After all, if a ninja tried to be a hero, only death and tragedy awaited. Like Jiraiya, like his father and like the 3rd Hokage. He would be added to the list along with them, unfortunately. He let out a resigned sigh and tried to gather the rest of his energy. SS Sasuke awake there? There was no immediate answer, but a grunt was all he needed to confirm his consciousness. The black-haired man tilted his head slightly and decided to answer. What? The annoyance and exhaustion clear in his voice. Looks like we're dead. Told you so, he grinned cheekily. Sasuke can only look up at the sky in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his former best friend and the only man he could possibly respect could smile at a time like this. They were dying a slow, painful death. It was the worst way to die for Sasuke. So much shame in his actions, but not once did he regret them. At least you will be going first. He knew they both had no chance of being saved. So at the very least he wouldn't let the idiot have the satisfaction of being alive longer than he did. No matter the situation, it was always a contest between the two. Naruto wanted to laugh, but he couldn't in his beaten state. He couldn't help but feel nostalgia of the old days when Sasuke was more or less sane. We'll see, you bastard, we'll see. Naruto answered back with faint vigor. Sasuke grunted, accepting the final challenge of the blonde Hokage. Naruto smiled, it really was just like old times. The forest. Hurry up, sensei. Madara said they were here. A pink-haired young lady spoke. She was running through the forest at speeds unimaginable to the naked eye. Her worry clear in her voice. Why? Her best friend and former crush were fighting each other to the death. Who in their right mind wouldn't be scared of the situation? They, along with the leaders of the alliance, had defeated Madara and got the information out of him. I know she knew he was just as worried, but something in his voice almost broke her heart. Like he knew or figured out something she didn't and was keeping it from her. She didn't feel like asking, it would only serve to distract her. Please, I'm almost there. She yelled in her mind. Not willing to accept the fact that the chakra had died off long ago. Kakashi knew this as well and knew the reality of it. They made it just to see both bodies lay there motionless. Neither could speak a word. 10 minutes before. You still there? Naruto spoke out calmly, feeling his end approaching. He decided to say his final words to his rival. But this time there was no answer. Dread started to fill him. He called out his name again to make sure if he was okay. Sasuke. The grief and sadness in his voice gradually grew more and more after each call. After a few more, his eyes started to sting, realizing his victory. One he never intended to win. He wanted to die first, but it seemed he was wrong. He was always wrong when it came to his best friend. Sasuke, damn it, you can't be dead already. Naruto couldn't even feel the tears running down his face. The reality had finally struck him like a lightning bolt. His best friend had passed on and now he was alone again. By himself, he was reminded of how frightening it was to be lonely. Looking at the sky, he remembered the memories of him and his team. The smiles, the laughter. It was the best feeling in the world compared to what he felt now. Silent sobs started to come out of him, unable to contain them any longer. He let it all out. The pent of sadness and regrets he's had in his life. Every minute, he felt the light fade more and more from his sight. I win instead of happiness, the voice was filled with nothing but pain. He closed his eyes, never to see the light of day again. In this world at least. Unknown area. Naruto's eyes shot open when he felt he was still alive. He was on the ground on what it looked like a mountain trail. He was confused, maybe this was heaven. He thought with a smile. He tried to get up and groaned in pain. The soreness from the battle still affected him here for some reason, but it would disappear in a few minutes. His chakra was full and he still felt the Kyuubis. A flicker of hope entered his body. Maybe he was still alive. Weird place. The blonde was surrounded by trees with black and white colored trees. The mountain trail looked like it led upward and Naruto felt a very weird sensation. He had no idea what heaven looked like, so maybe this was hell. He sighed, that would suck in his opinion. Naruto started moving forward up the road and was stopped when he heard a roar coming from the top. He ran immediately there to check it out but was shocked when he saw the scene. The black dragon with fangs the size of building towered him. The beast had dark eyes and blood-red slits. His entire body was probably 7 times the size of the Hokage building. Naruto could feel the Kyuubi shivering at the sight of the being. Not in fear but in excitement. "You're Uzumaki, Naruto?" The blonde nodded, unable to contain his look of confusion. "I would like to ask of your help. You see, my colleagues have all picked a pupil to train, but I haven't. And well, I need you to be my pupil." Naruto almost laughed. The fierce being in front of him almost sounded nervous. "What's the catch? I'm gonna make you young again." Now Naruto took this offensively. He was 23 for God's sakes, how old does this thing think he is? He even looked young. Noticing his offended look, the dragon sighed. "I meant younger than you are now. You see, my friends have been waging bets on which of their pupils will be the best and you look like a really fast learner. Their pupils are mostly around the age of 4 to 15, so I'm gonna make you 12 again for now." Naruto nodded. Feeling like his life was cut short, he decided to go along with it. He wasn't the type to turn an offer like this and he also needed a way to forget his past. "Sure, why not?" The dragon smiled, already liking the kid in front of him. "The name's Tradantes, kid. I'm the dragon of the west and the traveler of the night." Naruto nodded, ready to start his new life. A fresh start. It made him happy but at the same time sad because he wouldn't be seeing his family anytime soon. They can wait a little longer. They wouldn't be happy about me dying at age 23 anyways. Naruto thought to himself. "Let's get this party started, sensei." The dragon nodded and immediately started his training. Naruto felt his body grow smaller and realized that the dragon was making him younger again. "Let's see how fast you learn, boy." And with that, Naruto started his new training regiment. Eager to learn new skills and hoping for a new adventure. The ruins of the Dark Night. 3 years later. Not bad at all. Tradantes, the dragon of the west and traveler of the starry night, looked down from his hilltop position and watched his pupil finish up the last of his training. The blonde had grown considerably from his 12-year-old form. The black dragon snorted in amusement at the blonde's condition. A 26-year-old man inside of a 15-year-old's body, not even a dragon like him would see that often. He sighed, it was time for his departure and Naruto still hasn't completed his final technique. Maybe the blonde wasn't the best student for him after all. Or not, man, what perfect timing the kid had. His smile grew larger if possible and flew to his student and took a good final look at his masterpiece production. The blonde was 5'11", he wore a black leather armor that was sleeveless on his right side but had shoulder pads and sleeves going down below his elbows on his left. He also had black baggy pants and a gray sash wrapped around his waist. "And I see. You're definitely a fast learner, boy." Naruto sighed. Even after spending 3 years with the Elder Dragon, he was still plastered with that nickname. But he was pleasantly surprised by the upgrade the anti-dragon training gave his body. Though he lost over half his techniques, all the training made up for it. The consequences of being in a different dimension had hit him after his first year into training. The incident happened when he suddenly started to lose the memories of his past. It wasn't really a problem at first, but when he started to lose his ability to do ninjutsu, the blonde started to panic. He also didn't want to forget his old friends like Shikamaru, Sakura, Sai and etc. In the end, Naruto was forced to write down notes of his memories so he could remember them when he eventually forgot. He retained his signature moves, Rasengan, Kage Bunshin, Sage Mode and a few dozen wind-water techniques, but forgot all the rest sadly. He was more focused on the memories of his friends rather than techniques at the time. Luckily he also retained his sealing skills and placed a bounding seal to attach his memories to a medium. Tsunade's necklace. So in short, as long as he had the necklace around his neck, the memories would stay with him forever. That was without a doubt the scariest week Naruto's ever had in his 26 years of life. The stupid dragon didn't even tell him about the memory loss symptom and replied with a "you didn't ask." That made Naruto angry like never before but let it go, deciding that he only lost expendable memory. "Yep, so you're leaving, huh? You did say it was overdue." The dragon nodded and grinned proudly at his pupil. Naruto was saddened by the information, but it was overshadowed by the sheer excitement in his body. He was finally gonna go out and do missions like the good old days. Sure, the conditions were a bit different, but this was the beginning to his fresh start. His fresh identity. "Before I leave, I have a gift for you." Tradantes threw a small object at him. Naruto caught it and looked at it with a confused expression. It was a beautifully designed black gourd with white petal designs. It was filled with royal black sake. "What's this for?" The dragon laughed and told him to drink it. Naruto was hesitant to do so, but complied and immediately felt the effects. "Whoa." The dragon laughed at him. "The sake of the dragons. Night sake. Helps you go to sleep, cures symptoms of depression, and fuels your Dragon Slayer power." Naruto laughed and understood the use for it. It was for an emergency if darkness was ever out of reach. That situation was high unlikely, but he wouldn't take any chances. This world was a mystery to him after all. "Awesome. What happens when it runs out?" The dragon looked at him as if he just said the most brilliant thing in the world. Naruto fell down in exasperation at the implications his master had just given him. Tradantes immediately broke down laughing and carefully patted the blonde with his pinky. "Just howl at the sky and come back here a week after it runs out. I'll have someone deliver it to ya." Naruto smiled and nodded at his teacher. "So this is goodbye." He was holding back tears. Though the thing was a jerk at times, he was like a third father to him. "For now. Remember, don't tell any other Dragon Slayer the secret." He gave Naruto a goodbye pat on the back, making him fly 20 feet backwards at the impact. Laughing at his pupil's expense one last time, he proceeded to fly off into the night and disappeared into the skies. Standing on top of the hilltop, Naruto stared at the form of his disappearing master. He shed a few tears, but quickly forgot it and went to get his traveling items. Naruto looked at his master's gourd one last time and let out a genuine smile. His brain then clicked. "Wait. What secret? Damn it, he tricked me again." He cursed his master and howled at the sky, angry at his forgetfulness. He was unaware of the laughter of his master from afar. "I love messing with that kid." Week later. Naruto was tired. He had been traveling for an entire week without rest due to his blazing excitement. His hyperactiveness finally became his downfall when he collapsed in a heap right in front of the town he'd been aiming for. Magnolia, the home of the Mage Guild, fairy tale. He had heard rumors of another Dragon Slayer being there and his curiosity turned into interest from that. His blood was boiling for battle. Shinobi or mage, it didn't matter because it was the blood running in his veins that made him addicted to fighting. He really wanted to get up and run to the guild. But his legs weren't listening to him. "Are you okay?" He looked up and saw a woman with brown hair and dark blue eyes. She was wearing a bikini-style top and knee-high black shorts. On her lower body she had a very noticeable tattoo. "That's one sexy tattoo you got there." "Yeah, I'm fine, thanks for a skin, miss." "Kana." She smiled at the comment. "I'm Naruto." "Hey, I recognize that tattoo. Are you part of Fairy Tail?" She nodded and showed off her mark with pride. She truly loved her guild more than anything and she had no shame when showing it off wherever she went. "Yep, you a mage." She saw him nod and pulled out one of her cards. "Let me help ya." He saw her cards glow majestic green and red for a second and struck his legs. "Magic cards. Queen of Hearts." When the glow wrapped around his legs, he immediately felt the fatigue leave him. He stood up and looked at her with awe. "Hey, that's awesome. I didn't know you could do that with cards." He chuckled at fond memories of him and Tsunade playing poker together every Friday night. Kana looked at him curiously. "What exactly can you do with cards?" Naruto smirked. "Win money." She chuckled at the joke. "So you're a mage, huh? Come on, I'll show you to the guild." She saw his excitement and stifled a chuckle. He was like Natsu except more interesting and not as loud. "So where'd you come from?" Naruto put his hands to his chins in a thinking posture. "A small town near the west." Kana rose her eyebrow by a fraction, interested in the vague answer. "Which one?" Naruto's eyes immediately saddened. Kana took notice of it and regretted asking the question. "I don't know the name, but it was destroyed by Deliora when I was a kid." Kana nodded her head and patted his back. "Sorry if I." "No worries, now I'm here. It's all in the past." His smile threw her for a loop. She didn't pry and decided to change the subject. "So what's your magic?" Naruto sighed inwardly in relief. He didn't like lying, but he was so damn good at it. "Yep, congratulations, brat. You fooled another human with no skills in reading another. Real skills." The fox didn't speak often, but whenever he did, it was usually a snarky and sarcastic comment. So he replied in the usual way. Go back to sleep before I shove a Rasen shuriken up your ass. He heard the fox snort but complied. Naruto sighed. Even after taming him, he was still a big pain in the ass. My that's a secret he. She couldn't help but be annoyed by the answer, but relented. She stopped and looked up at the building she considered a second home to home. And here it is. Welcome to Fairy Tail. She smiled widely as did the blonde. Naruto's eyes looked at the building with awe and amazement. It's huge. Man, this is gonna be fun. Immediately entering the guild with his luggage, they walked in and saw a good number of people around chatting and eating like everyday people. Naruto saw the request board and was impressed by its size. He'd never go broke again. Boy, master. We have a newbie here trying out for the guild. His name's Naruto. All eyes were instantly on him. Completely used to attention, he smiled a million-watt smile and waved at everyone. I'm a new guy, huh? Let's see what you got. An elderly man approached Naruto and seized him up for a moment. Naruto couldn't help but feel the sheer amount of magical power the smaller man midget had. It rivaled the amounts that Kisame had back in the days, maybe even more because he was suppressing most of it. Naruto shivered slightly. This man midget was definitely the boss if his magical power could rival that of Kisame and possibly Nagato, master of the seventh path of pain. 1. Welcome to Fairy Tail, young man. I can tell you've got some experience in those eyes of yours. Naruto nodded. Well then, you can take jobs anytime you want, but notify me or the front desk first. Makarov put his hands to chin in a thinking posture. He looked at the young man in front of him. His magic power was being completely hidden and the amounts he had were still phenomenal. He looked upstairs and saw that his S-rank mages excluding Mistgun, who was absent, were thinking the same. He looked at the top floor and saw Gildarts sigh and rub his head. Kana found a good one. His magical energy is so light on the outside, but it's also dark somewhere inside. Not to mention his dark powers outnumbers his light in quantity. Gildarts whispered to himself. Oh yeah, you need the Markoi Mira. The white-haired teen walked up to Naruto with a stamp in her hand and a scowl on her face. Where? Naruto thought for a moment and grinned. He lifted his shirt, ignoring her growing blush, and pointed to his stomach. Right next to where his seal was. She nodded and complied. Sweet. Makarov nodded and smiled widely and jumped up to the top floor. Boy. We're having a welcoming party today. Get the drinks out. Everyone yelled ecstatically for the party to get started. Later that night. Fairy Tail's roof. The party was fun for Naruto. He hadn't laughed and drunk like that in a long time, being that he never had time for it in the past. It was always taking lives day and night for him and his friends. He had to go through never-ending training to catch up with the genius of his best friend. Eventually he would have cracked, but he died before then. He looked down at his new guild and produced a grateful smile. Remembering his master's present, he picked up the gourd tied to his waist and took in its appearance. To a new beginning. He said to himself and sipped it, immediately feeling the power of the night fueling him. The power of darkness running through his veins. Lobby of Fairy Tail, few days later. Team? Makarov nodded. He'd just explained the benefits of being in a team to their newest member of the guild. Naruto looked around the room and tried to gauge everyone's specific level via spiritual potency. He wanted to hit the B and A rank missions immediately, which meant he needed teammates at a decent level enough to not get hurt. The possibility of going solo was open, but the master had disapproved of the very idea due to his new status. Naruto looked at Kana and instantly added her to the potentials list of his team after remembering her card tricks. Guessing that she was a mid to long range fighter and not to mention the healing move she possessed, he had no problems with working with her. Looking around the room, he still needed a support type member to back up and defend during battle if needed. It was the basic principle of assembling a team, you always needed insurance just in case something went wrong. There was no such thing as a guaranteed victory when out in the field. The mission to wave back when he was a child was very proof of it. The simple C-rank mission had turned A-rank just because they were fed bad information, and it led to the near deaths of them all. Hey boss, are there any support type magic users around? Makarov started petting his beard while thinking of the younger man's request. Thinking of a solution, he suddenly snapped his fingers and whipped a small green book into his hands. The blonde's eyebrows perked at the gesture. Look through here. Naruto nodded and saw that it was Fairy Tail's guild registry, a list of members and their general information. For example, their likes, dislikes and magic type. He saw the abilities of each mage they had and was pleasantly surprised at the versatility his new guild possessed. They had powerhouses, defense specialists and even medical types. He grew especially interested when he read about one of their mages using enchantment magics. It vaguely resembled the art of sealing back in his old world, he thought to himself. Flipping through the D sections, he stopped and saw a particularly interesting name and ability. Natsu, the Fire Dragon Slayer. Interesting and rare. Makarov nodded, he himself had never imagined such a young child to possess such rare magic, either when he came to the guild. Naruto looked at the rosy-headed boy from across the room and smiled, he was probably wondering where his master went. Lucky for Naruto, his master, Tradantes, played by his own rules. The dragon didn't tell the blonde of his intentions, but he suspected it was something important if it was kept from him for so long. He is a very good powerhouse type. Kid may go overboard a bit, but he's still a solid member. Naruto chuckled at the image of Natsu destroying the area with fire-based attack and causing sheer mayhem for his teammates. Those types tend to get into the most trouble. The elder man agreed and chuckled as well. The truth in the blonde's words were well placed. He was watching the boy read about the members and was very impressed by the way he categorized their advantages and disadvantages. Lucky Alietta, wood-based magic. Naruto smirked and looked for her in the lobby. Frowning when he noticed her absence. Hey boss, where's Lucky? After a few minutes of thinking her shook his head and sighed. She's still on a mission. I don't usually do this but can you go back her up? Lucky tends to get in over her head often. Naruto nodded, knowing full well what it was like to do that. As a kid he usually took on things bigger than he could handle and often failed. But it made him better in the end. What mission is she on? He saw the old man pulled out a paper that had devil extermination on the top. It had a reward of 400,000 jewels to kill a roaming monster in the south. Interesting pick. It's a B rank quest. Makarov nodded and repeated the fact that she often got into bad situations that were out of her skills. Alright, I'll be there in no time. I was planning on asking her to be on my team anyways. The elder man nodded, already suspecting his intentions. After seeing the blonde leave the lobby and out of earshot, he immediately looked to his top floor to search for his grandson, Luxus. Luxus, I have a job for you. Said man jumped down and looked at his grandfather. He was blonde and wore a big yellow headphones that could have passed for his ears if looked from afar. What do I need, Gramps? He looked at his grandson and sighed. A few moments ago he saw him try to sneak out through the second floor window, most likely to follow the guild's new guy. I know you're just as interested as I am about his magic. Can you follow him? Luxus nodded, confirming the elder man's suspicions that he had about his grandson. The elder man had a feeling that he would have done so whether with his consent or not. Fortunately for Luxus, Makarov was also curious. Sure, why not? He smirked and bolted out of the room like lightning. The master sighed, his grandson was an even bigger show-off than him when he was at that age. 5 hours later. Naruto was smart. He knew someone was following him, and it was obviously someone strong if he went by the amount of magical power the person possessed. The blonde didn't care, if anything it would add on to his mystery. Naruto sighed, it was tough being unpredictable all the times. People just didn't understand the stress it put on one at all, he thought to himself. Now, I wonder where she is. Walking to the town where the client came from, he took notice of the surrounding area. Bashed trees, burned grass and black soot was all over the premises. Looking to his right he saw dead animals and several burned remains of those who stood up to the devil. Sighing in dismay, Naruto was glad that those back where he came from didn't hunt demons like this because he might have just been dead long ago. He then suddenly snapped his head to the left when he heard a scream of pain. Dashing to the source of the scream with all his might, he made it to the scene just in time to see a violet-haired teenage girl collapse in a heap near a closabi tree. Knowing who she was, Naruto rushed to her side to see if she needed any medical treatment. Looking at her wounds, he felt a feeling of great relief when none of which were fatal or potentially dangerous. Are you okay? The girl looked up, eyes half-lidded. She saw a handsome blonde-haired boy trying his best to heal her wounds. Smiling at the gesture, she decided to answer. I'm fine, but that thing picked me apart like a lion does to a mouse when it's locked in a 5x5 cage. Sweat dropping at the way she tried to express her problem, he nodded. Though he couldn't help but crack a smirk, the two he picked as teammates sure were weird. Hey, you're part of Fairy Tail, right? She nodded. He grinned and showed his mark, causing her eyes to widen by a fractium. I'm the new guy, Naruto. I joined a few days ago. You need any help? He saw her grin, and that was enough of a yes for him. Turning back, he started to stretch for the upcoming battle. Careful, it uses sound magic. It also punches as hard as a tiger on steroids. Sweat dropping again at her attempt at a simile, he looked at the so-called devil and grinned. In his years, he'd definitely seen worse. For example, when he fought Itachi when Kabuto brought him back to life with the famed Ito Tensei. That was the 16th most troublesome day he's ever had in his life. Right after dealing with Temari when she was on her period. I'll be fine. This shouldn't take too long. She nodded hesitantly. She sensed him gathering an abnormal amount of magical energy into his right palm and just decided to watch him in action. She saw him approach the monster that was the size of a small mansion and looked up with what looked like a big stupid smirk on his face. Boy, big ugly, come down in here and get it. He yelled from his position. The monster was as big as the Hokage Tower when it stood fully. It has one big horn stuck to the side of his head resembling the Vikings of old. Its eyes were bloodshot and slitted, meaning it was in a terrible berserk stage. That made it easier to fight ultimately, he thought in his mind. Responding to the insult, the devil produced a large ear-splitting roar that was so powerful it caused the surrounding trees to snap into pieces. Grinning at the monster's attempt at destroying his eardrums, he looked at his palms and grinned at his masterpiece. His famed defense destroyer that surpassed that of the fourth Hokage. The move that destroyed, shredded and ultimately skewered Uchiha Sasuke's great Susanoo shield in a matter of seconds. Buten. Adama Rasengan. Wind release. Great ball spiraling sphere, a bowling ball-sized sphere of wind materialized in Naruto's hands, creating a lot of screeching sounds along the way. Luxus, whom was hidden, looked at the attack with a generous amount of curiosity. The amount of magical power gathered in his palm was extraordinary, and not to mention it was condensed to the point that it might as well have been a sword. The blonde looked at the distance from him to the monster's face and couldn't help but feel anxiety within him. He'd finally have the chance to test out his new darkness space-time magic. Focusing his spare magical energy, he made an attempt at the very first move his master, Tradantes, had taught him. Page Aisha, shadow projection. A door made of majestic darkness suddenly appeared before him. He looked up and saw the same one right in front of the beast. Smirking, he stepped through the path of darkness and appeared where the other was. Right in front of the thing's face. Proceeding to slam his defense killer into its eye, resulting with a loud painful shriek of pain and a huge amount of blood splattering around the area. Looking at the results, he smirked sadistically when half of the monster's face was skewered off leaving only half an eye and a brain visible. What was that? Lucky looked at her soon-to-be teammate in awe. The move wasted the giant in a single moment. It cut through the rock-hard face like a chainsaw through wood. She watched him walk towards her while getting rid of the blood stains. One of my attacks. Usually, I only use it on big targets like this guy. She nodded, forgetting to ask about the shadow that he had used to teleport his way to the monster's face. Luxus on the other hand was smarter and more observant than that. A powerful wind-based attack like that and a method of instant traveling using shadows. Interesting, he's also clever with the way he positioned his shadows as well. Speaking of shadows, if I didn't know any better, I'd think. Shaking his head, he proceeded to leave and report back to his grandfather about the power he'd seen the blonde use. Bolting out of the area like a wisp lightning, he only left a burn mark on the ground that would have indicated his presence. So, Lucky, what do you think about forming a team? She looked at him with a confused expression. Why do you want me to join your team? Naruto looked at her and gave her a bright smile. Because I think your magic is wonderful. Wood magic has many uses, and I heard from the master that you are quite skilled at it. Blushing at his praise, she nodded her head. Well, it's alright. I'm sure. I guess if you want to form a team. A team is usually made up of 3 to 5 members. Who else do you have in mind? Going into his thinking posture, he sat down comfortably next to her. Kana, and that's it for now. A 3-person cell is good enough since I can't think of any other person. She nodded, acknowledging his choice. Lucky had seen the other woman fight and was impressed by her skills as much. Her eyes suddenly showed realization when she reviewed his choices. You seem to be a planner of sorts. I'm guessing you're making it seem as though you are the powerhouse. I'm a support, while Kana can attack from high and low and mid to long range. It's not a bad idea actually. Naruto smiled at her small deduction. He was after all the 7th Hokage. Naruto didn't want to brag, but his tactical mind when assigning teams were way better than any other Kage in the elemental countries. Brilliant deduction. I definitely made the right choice in choosing you. Returning his smile, she proceeded to stand back up only to stagger. Naruto saw this and moved in to help her move. Hey now, you're in no shape to be moving yet. I'll carry you back to the town and inform the client of the success. Picking her up bridal style, he sprinted back to the town. He smiled, 1 down, 1 more to go for him. Fairy Tale Lobby. Naruto sat down and drank the sake he ordered. After confirming the defeat of the devil, he and Lucky came back to the guild. She was sent to the infirmary because of a sore ankle and broken bone on her right hand she had gotten in her fight before Naruto's arrival. He was paid half of course, though he didn't want it, the master insisted, since he saved one of his own guild members. There was no arguing that at all. Right now he was thinking of a way to approach Kana and invite her to the team. He didn't want to be too blunt about it, but he also didn't want to be too subtle about it. Sighing tiredly, Naruto looked at the clock and saw that it was almost midnight. Not having a place to live, he decided to go find a hotel to stay at for the night. Before he reached the gates of the building, his name was suddenly called by a familiar voice behind him. Turning around, the blonde was introduced to the sight of the very person he had trouble approaching. Hey Naruto. I heard you saved Lucky the other day. Kana said with a smile adorning her features. Naruto nodded and returned the expression. Yeah, wanted to make a good impression, you know. He replied smoothly, trying to find a way to twist his words and find a way to switch the subject into teams. Yeah, I know, hey, wanna go drink together sometimes. Beer tastes better when drinking with a friend rather than alone. She chuckled. Naruto smiled and couldn't believe his luck. I'd like that. Hey, there's something I wanna talk to you about. She gave him a curious expression but nodded nonetheless. The other day, the master was talking to me about teams. He gave me a guild registry and the list of magics everyone had. I saw yours and Lucky's and thought it made a good fit with mine. She nodded knowing where this was going. Kana would have accepted but she had something else in mind. Sure, but on one condition. He looked at her, smile, a devious smile. He shuddered mentally. You have to outdrink me. Naruto didn't know whether to roll his eyes or laugh at the request. It was sadly predictable due to her drinking habits. Not once has he seen her without a mug in her hands. I'll warn ya, I never get drunk. Kana smirked at his reply. Neither do I. Returning her smirk, he accepted her challenge with glee. Tomorrow? She nodded. Tomorrow. Leaving, she missed the ear-splitting grin he sported on his face. He didn't bluff when he proclaimed that he never got drunk. Naruto, himself, was a heavier drinker that Tsunade and Jiraiya combined due to the stress of rebuilding his home. The blonde knew better than to underestimate someone, but this time, he couldn't help it at all. This was also a chance to give everyone a hint of his powers, he thought to himself. Next day. Everyone was gathered in the lobby to see the two challengers face off. They sat at a rectangular wooden table staring down each other while waiting for the barrels of beer to get ready. Everyone was anxious to see if the new guy had the guts to beat their best and heaviest drinker down once and for all. Bets were being thrown around and though everyone heavily sided with Kana, there were a few gamblers out there willing to bet on Naruto. What's going on? A red-headed teen spoke aloud. She had just returned from her mission to see everyone in the building gathered around a table and placing bets all of a sudden. She was given an answer when a voice spoke from the side of her. Mirahin, her rival. Kana and the new guy are having a face-off. If Naruto wins, then Kana has to form a team with him and Lucky. Erza nodded and couldn't help but feel the urge to bet on Kana. She relented, of course, not wanting to encourage other people to do so. Who Taya think's gonna win? Erza heard a voice from behind her. Tilting her head, she saw another teen with rosy hair standing next to Mira's sister. Kana, of course. Who can't outdrink the queen of alcohol? Lisana answered for her. Erza nodded in agreement as it was Kana's unofficial nickname. Well, let's just see. Erza replied. She looked up and was surprised to see Mistgun attending. She didn't want to scare him away by telling everyone else, so she kept quiet about his presence. Looking around the room, she also saw Gildarts half asleep and drinking on the second floor. Luxus was closing his eyes and resting on the second floor as well. Erza smiled. It seemed just for this one day, everyone at Fairy Tail was enjoying themselves for a change. On the second floor, the mystery known as Mistgun ignored the split-second glance Erza gave him, not wanting to quirk her interest any further. He eyed the blonde sitting at the table and was curious to his identity. I have never seen that man before here or there. Who is he? Shaking his head and dismissing the issue, he just decided to watch the match. Intent on relaxing today. Looks like it's all here, Kana said to herself, casting the blonde a glance and saw his smug grin. He must be confident. Maybe he doesn't know my reputation, she smirked at him. On the other side, Naruto was having different thoughts. Kyuubi, stay out of this. I'll beat her fair and square. The demon snorted and just waved him off, not caring. Don't come crying to me when she just happens to be better than you expected. Naruto sighed inwardly. Maybe he was right, but he really did want to play fair though. Having the Kyuubi make him immune to the effects of alcohol were unfair to Kana's ability to drink after all. Alright. Competitors. Are we ready? Naruto sweat-dropped. Did they really need a microphone and big screen TV recording them for this? This world sure had a flair for theatrics, he thought amused. Hell yeah. Kana roared, eliciting a loud cheer from the crowd. Damn right. Naruto answered with enthusiasm. Once the cheering died down, Naruto took a deep breath and mentally readied himself. Kana did the same on the other side. Awesome. Now, ladies and gentlemen of Fairy Tail, I present you to the challenger. He hails from the western shores and has traveled all the way here. The newest member of Fairy Tail and the self-proclaimed Dragon of the West. Uzumaki Naruto. Everyone cheered for him except a few of those who were betting on Kana, whom booed comically. Naruto rose his hands and taunted them with a challenge gesture which the majority laughed at. The S-class members raised their eyebrows at his title, not understanding the reasoning. Nani? He doesn't look like a dragon. Natsu yelled with his eyes bugging out. Happy added innocently. Sighing, Mirahin bopped both of them in the head and told them to shut up. On this side, we have the champion. The mighty queen of alcohol herself. The goddess of wine and mistress of beer. A Fairy Tail veteran. Kana Alberona. Everyone cheered at that, and there were even some people bowing down to her in a servant-like gesture. All in all, it was quite an amusing event for everyone. "You ready, new guy?" she said while getting a handle on the barrel. Everyone was in odd or bold move to go straight for the big guns. They looked at Naruto to see if he was gonna answer and was excited to see him doing the same. "I'll drink you under the table," he replied with a cheeky grin. Gasps arose from the crowd as they looked at the irate face of Kana, whom sported a playful scowl. Makarov jumped on the table with his hands up in the air as if he were judging a race. "Ready?" They both nodded. "Go." Signaling the start, Naruto and Kana started to jug down their barrels with frightening speed. 3 hours later. Are they still at it? Erza had left 1 hour into the match. Both of the competitors were showing no signs of stopping at the time, so she took the time to go shopping for new armor and cloths. Yup, you'll never guess who's winning though. Erza looked at the table and was surprised to see Kana faltering instead of Naruto. She looked at the blonde challenger and saw that he wasn't too much better, his eyes half-lidded and drowsy. Other than that, he sat straight and looked at Kana with determination in his eyes. "It's gonna end any time now." Nodding in agreement, she sat at her table and ordered something to eat. 1 hour later. Naruto couldn't believe he was still conscious after his last shot. They had finished drinking barrels half an hour ago to slow down the pace of the game. He looked in front of him and saw Kana, whom looked half asleep. "Ready to give?" She spoke with a burp, eliciting some worried gasps from the crowd. Not a surprise when the majority of them bet on her after all. "Nah, I'm good. Besides, it's your turn again." Kana sighed in dismay. She looked at the shot of tequila in front of her and could have sworn there were 5 of them. They had finished the vodka, rum and whiskey long ago, and this was all they had left. Her urge to collapse on the table and sleep was stronger than ever. Not in her life did she think any one man could outdrink her, not with her special condition. Kana's magic gave her an enhanced ability to be slightly immune to the effects of alcohol. That was why she was allowed to drink as much as she did. Does he have that ability? Shaking her head, she tried to move her hand and pick up the shot. Of course it took a minute because she was seeing in quads. She lifted her drink only for it to slip out of her grasps. Everyone gasped at the sight. Kana on the other hand gave them a resigned smile. "Looks like we're a team falling over." She closed her eyes in a bliss. The brunette was asleep before she hit the ground. "I don't know if I won or not." Now to tell luck he was unable to finish the sentence as he like Kana fell on his back and was out like a light. Makarov went to see if they were alright, sighing in relief as he did so. He knew of Kana's magical condition, but he had no idea of Naruto's. "Boy, bring in the medics." "Wait, who won?" He sighed and looked at the crowd. "Technically, you're supposed to drink one more shot than the other, so it's a draw." Ignoring the ahs he got from the crowd, especially those who betted on the blonde's victory, he dragged both of them to the doctor's office to be checked on. "You two are very heavy drinkers." I'd say he almost cried at the sheer amount of money they'd spent buying all the drinks for the competition. Next morning. The disagreeable physical aftereffects of drunkenness, such as a headache or stomach disorder, usually felt several hours after cessation of drinking. That is the official definition of a hangover, and it was exactly what Naruto was feeling right now. The brain cells in his head felt like they'd just been burned and restored, then burned once more. It had been a while since he'd drunk so much at one time. The other time he did so was the day after he became Hokage and took upon its responsibilities. Never in his life had he seen so much paper. He felt a terrible headache enter him even before he bothered opening his eyes. The blonde tried to sit up, groaning as he did so and took a look around the room. Now he grabbed his head in an attempt to soothe the pain but was in vain. The Kyuubi's laughter didn't help either, so he just tried to relax. "You alright?" he heard a feminine voice say beside him. Looking to his right he saw Kana sleeping in the bed next to his own. "You too?" She nodded and chuckled. "Yeah, it was a draw according to the master." She pulled out her deck of cards and activated its glow. Like before, it reminded him. "This should help, need it." He nodded and let her run her magic. When she finished, a sigh of relief escaped him. He smiled at the usefulness of her healing magic. "Thanks, this feels so much nicer." "Doesn't it?" She chuckled and told him of her magical advantage. Naruto shook his head, what his surrogate grandmother would do for her ability. "So what's the name?" A confused expression crossed him before it slowly turned to realization. "I dunno, never was good at naming teams," he replied. "How about Team 7? A voice said from the door, turning his head slightly, he saw violet hair from the corner from his eyes. "Team 7. Kana said, not really liking the simplicity of the name. Naruto shook his head as well, that number was forever cursed in his eyes, and he would not bring it into this world as well. "Something more intimidating," Kana suggested. Naruto snapped his fingers and grinned. "How about Team Otherworld?" Kana nodded her head at that suggestion. Lucky though confused, also liked the name. "Why Otherworld? What does it mean?" She didn't understand the name and the symbolism. Naruto smiled. It means we have otherworldly powers. Thinking about it, she suddenly nodded her head furiously. It made her feel excited and it could without a doubt intimidate enemies from afar. That was the purpose of team names after all. So when's our first mission, Team Otherworld? Kana and Naruto looked at one another and laughed outright. Both answering at the same time. When this hangover's gone. They shared their first laugh as a team. Fairy Tail's lobby. Few weeks later. Troublesome was the only thing Naruto could describe this situation. How in the 9 tails of the Kyuubi did I get myself into this situation? Our blonde hero mentally yelled at himself. He looked at all the charges that were placed against him and his team and resisted the urge to go destroy the Council of Mages with a rain of Rasen shurikens. Of course he didn't have the chakra capacity to do that, so he crossed that idea out. It all started when they took an A-ranked mission to sniff out an underground mafia core near a town to the north. It was their first A-ranked quest and Naruto had been adamant about not screwing up. Too bad that they did though. The mission was such a haze that he didn't even want to think about it. Naruto, you do know what this means, right? Makarov sighed. Of course, he was suspecting it to happen at least once in his lifetime, but never did he think it would be this soon. They had only been together for a few weeks. Team Otherworld had been sued by multiple companies due to their ecstatic behavior beyond others during their mission. Holding up the papers, he did what he did to everyone who got charges. He read them out loud for everyone to hear. Kana and Lucky really found the floor designs interesting at the moment. Keep calm, it'll be over in no time. Of course the chuckles he heard from upstairs didn't help his situation at all. Looking up, he gritted his teeth when he noticed Luxus doing his absolute best to not break down laughing. Naruto did not find this amusing at all. Not one bit. Where do I start? He looked at violet-haired girl and decided to end her misery first. She, after all, had the least penalties of the three. Lucky. Her head snapped forward, looking at him with comedic tears in her eyes. You're being accused of destroying the forest path, effectively making the merchants delay their trading indefinitely. The merchant guilds are furious at us for this, she cried to herself, knowing that she'd just made a huge fool of herself in front of her new teammates. They were still having some trouble working together, but there had been progress. Some progress, little progress. Kana, you have been charged of stealing numerous amounts of alcohol from the merchants while they were away and assaulted the client's daughter. Why? Kana's eyes showed fury at the accusation. I was framed. Framed, I tell you, besides she had it coming to her. She yelled out angrily while pointing at him. The woman insulted not only her looks, but her pride as a mage. Remembering their first meeting, Kana had heard the spoiled woman say things like how unwomanly and she'll never find a husband. In short, Kana beat the snot out of her when she crossed the like about her unwomanlike drinking habits. And Naruto the master shook his head, the list filled nearly the entire page. I guess I'll start with the good parts. You did accomplish the mission, of course. The underground world of criminals, Awuk, have begun to fear your name. The Dragon of the West's legend is starting to spread nicely. Naruto had the nerve to smirk at that. But here it comes, the blonde thought sadly to himself. The battle nearly destroyed the entire town square. The merchants were furious when you shredded their land to pieces. Look at their houses. It looks more like a wooden igloo-ish triangle, much less a real building. How in the world did you do this kind of damage? He yelled with an angry face. Naruto tried not to flinch. Makarov sighed and looked at the picture of the damage and narrowed his eyes. It's so artistic. Look at this new house, it looks like how the old civilizations used to make them. Amazing. This one looks like a panda. Hey Gildarts, take a look at this thing. Everyone in the building sweat dropped at the complete 180 their master made halfway through the lecture. 1 second it was anger and the next it was praise. Team Otherworld looked flabbergasted as a whole. Luxus finally cracked and started rolling on the floor while everyone else in the guild followed. Naruto's face turned into immediate anger. What the hell is so funny? They all looked at him and shouted together. You're taking this too seriously. Natsu was the loudest of the group that yelled. The boy himself had often gotten into a lot of trouble with the council. Gray was still laughing at the seriousness of Naruto. The blonde was confused to their reaction. He, along with his team, were expecting a full-time punishment at their actions. Had they not destroyed half the town? Had they not assaulted the daughter of the client? Had they not interrupted the flow of trade along the very regions? The team looked at the laughing face of Gildarts and was confused to the laid-back response they had gotten. Come on Naruto, everyone makes mistakes on their first A-ranked mission. Even me, I did everything you three did but in less time. He chuckled at the memory of himself smashing through every building in sight. He was too lazy to go on the road anyways. The team sighed in relief. It had been their first time doing such damage on a mission and they were afraid of punishment. I'll talk to the council tomorrow, don't worry too much. The master said. Thank you master. Makarov waved it off, saying that it wasn't a big deal. As long as you know you did the right thing, there will be no punishment. That's fairy tale's true motto. Ain't that right? Everyone shouted in agreement. Naruto smiled and nodded, happy that his guild was so brilliantly laid back like they are. Turning his back he started to walk away and look for a place to sit. Well, that was a pleasant surprise. A sigh of relief was heard from them, except Kana. Nah, I already half suspected it. She smiled, which only made Naruto shake his head and grin. This guild is something else, alright, he thought to himself while looking for a place to sit, content with relaxing for the rest of the day. In the back. So what did you want to talk to me about? Makarov said. Gildarts had invited him to the back to speak about something. His face had been completely serious, and that was a bit surprising for a laid-back person like him, so he assumed it would be about work or something like that. Master, I want to apply for the 100-year mission, he paled at the request. Now that was the last thing he suspected from the man next to him. But now looking back, he shouldn't have been surprised since he's seen the subtle hinting the man had been giving him for a while. Now, well, maybe not so subtle, seeing as he did clean out nearly 3/4 of the S-class missions they had on the upper level of the building. Sighing, he looked at his longtime friend and best mage and argued mentally until he came to suitable a solution. I don't know. It's tough, and you know what happened to the last group who went on the 100-year quest. Gildarts nodded sadly. Never had he seen an elite squadron of mages ripped apart so easily. The mission had been to ultimately defeat and destroy Deliora, the devil misfortune and disaster. 8 years ago, the guild called Lamia Scale had sent out a whole battalion of mages to take out the powerful demon. The group had consisted of 3 S-class mages and 5 regulars under each of them, all very powerful in their own right. As soon as the battle began, they were ripped apart piece by bitter piece. To this day, Lamia Scale has never recovered from the losses. And every day, I thank her for defeating him. Makarov nodded at that, as he did the same. The ice alchemist that defeated and sealed Deliora in ice for eternity. The old man had respected the woman even before her battle against the demon, but after her tragic sacrifice, he demanded that she be eternally granted the title as one of the 10 wizard saints. Naturally, no one had an objection to that, so it had been made so. Gray had a great master. They lowered their heads in her memory. What can they say? She was something people could strive for. Was the best ice alchemist mage the world had seen in 100 years. Nonetheless, I still can't believe that you want to take up this one. Gildarts sighed and nodded his head. I want to do this no matter what you say, master. Makarov looked at the mission poster and shivered. The mission was complicated and very, very difficult to accomplish. Fine, but on one condition. Gildarts' eyebrows perked, interested in what the master had to say. You have to participate in this year's mage tournament. The taller man had declined every invitation to join the games, always saying that he was too lazy. Why? The condition threw him for a loop. The master was never one to show off power when he wanted to. Just for the sake of competing. Everyone has wanted you to join in the contest for a while now. The winners are usually Luxus or Erza, and sometimes Mira or Fry, depending on who participates. But if you join, then everyone will. Not to mention that it'll be a fun. He smiled. He also wanted this for a different reason, but he was leaving the taller man to figure that out. I see. Alright, I'll do it. He gave a resigned sigh, not really getting why he wanted to do it. Good, then I'll sign you up. Come on, don't give me that face, it'll be fun. He smiled at his friend. Gildarts shook his head. Having fun wasn't the problem. In fact, he liked the idea. The problem was, how was he gonna soundly crush everyone without hurting their feelings? It was troublesome. Streets of Magnolia. Fast and heavy steps could be heard if one were to be near the apartment complex in Magnolia, indicating the frustration of one Uzumaki Naruto. After leaving the guild for the day, he went on a search for a suitable apartment to stay in for the time being, as he'd been having trouble finding one. The blonde had checked out all the available places and found out that they just happened to have already been taken the morning before he came. It angered him to a great extent, believing that he was a victim of housing discrimination because they denied him. The truth was, the first 3 places he went to were completely genuine about their conditions, and he had in fact been there too late. But he didn't know that, so by the time he left the 3rd spot, a powerful killer intent began to radiate around him, and it scared the bejesus out of everyone who came in contact with him. That was the reason no one else had offered him a place, fear. It was the ironic yet comedic truth. Damn it, it's no good. And tears started to fall out as he sat on a bench in the park, which was fortunately empty. He could hear the cruel laughing of the 9-tailed fox from within him and gave it a mental slap, though it didn't actually do anything. The fox was still angered at the gesture. While he was messing with his tenant, he completely forgot to be aware of his surroundings. Boy, you alright? Quickly letting go of his muse, the blonde looked up to see a short middle-aged man looking at him with curious eyes. Yeah, just having a hard time finding a house. The other man nodded his head in understanding. Magnolia ha always been a crowded place, so finding a home would be quite difficult for a young person like him. But the blonde was fortunate today, though he didn't know it. I know how you feel. The man looked at his clothing and blinked for a second. He then smirked. Those clothes, are you a mage? The blonde nodded and sighed depressingly. The shorter man smiled deviously. You know, there's this rumor of a haunted apartment room 2 blocks from here. In fact, I own the building. My business has been going haywire and I need help. If you can solve this problem, I'll give you the room. Heck, I'll even give you the first 6 months free. The blonde's head snapped up so fast, he could have sworn it was about to fly off the next second. Naruto looked at him with wide eyes and grinned gratefully at the shorter man. Really? He nodded and grinned. Naruto shot up and pumped his fist into the air. Gosh. So what do I have to do? He asked, looking down at the man. Great, the name's Yo Kid. All I want you to do is check out the room and see if it's really haunted. No one has been able to figure out why, but once someone goes in they immediately appear outside the building walls. Naruto nodded, thinking it was somewhat akin to Genjutsu or illusionary tactics back home. Luckily for him, ever since he mastered the sage arts, such a thing was futile against him. Alright. I'll see what I can do. The man asked Naruto to follow him to the apartment room. When he saw the place, his jaws dropped to the floor. The lawn was beautifully cut, the architecture of the building was set so it would last as well. There was a cherry blossom tree on the roof of the building, he wondered how in the world it got up there. The name of the hotel was Fubari Onsen. Naruto grinned, an onsen. Sweet. How'd you get the tree up there? The man smiled. You don't know. You must be new around here then. We're famous for our sakura trees. Naruto smiled at that. The scenery was one of incredible peace, it was definitely his type of pad. Alright, follow me. He started climbing the stairs. He stopped at the top floor and looked at the only room in the vicinity. The door was carved cleanly with a flower design, the door was about the height of his former master, Jiraiya, meaning it was very big. The doorknob was pure white and round, making for an easy grip. Nice place, this it? The shorter man nodded. It's my best room. The incident started a while ago. I've been trying to get mages to help, but they've been really busy lately. Naruto nodded, understanding his plight. Guilds take many jobs, but the chances of picking this specific job was low. Naruto hesitantly approached the door, but stopped when he felt the wave of powerful aura coming from the knob. His eyes widened by a fraction, it was a clever technique. The trigger for the illusion is the door handle. No civilian or average mage should be able to sense this easily. As soon as someone touches the knob, a powerful illusion is casted in a large margin, confusing everyone. He grabbed the handle and confirmed that it was indeed true. He felt the natural energy flare, indicating him of the illusion. Naruto closed his eyes, gathering enough natural chakra, and flared the illusion away. The result was the surrounding air crumbling into pieces, confusing the shorter man. What happened? He asked. Naruto explained to him the mechanics of illusions, only to confuse him even further. He relented and nodded, willing to let the teen continue his work. Alright, I'm going in. He opened the door and was awestruck by the room. It was clean, big, and it had a view of the entire town. Naruto smiled, he hit the jackpot today. While he was busy looking out into the city, he didn't sense the whack on the head he was suddenly given. Jumping to the other side of the room while holding his head in pain, he looked around for the culprit to give him a thorough beatdown. Only to see no one around. The hell? Confused, he turned his head around and started to look again. The familiar feeling of getting hit over the head came back again. He jumped again and rubbed his head in searing pain. Oh, he groaned painfully. What are you doing in my pad? He heard a voice speak. It was surprisingly soft and feminine, yet aggressive. Looking around the room, he grew more confused when he didn't see anybody in the vicinity. His eyes widened hysterically, thinking that this room had a real ghost, he didn't believe it at first. The blonde was absolutely frightened by the possibility of fighting a ghost. Sakura told him many stories of how strong ghosts were compared to humans. Little did he know, she was just trying to freak him out. Ino had dared her to do so, but Naruto didn't know that. Looking around again, he heard a sigh of distress come out from the unseen culprit. Boy, down here. Naruto looked down, immediately forgetting his ghost theory, and saw something he had never expected. The cat. The blue talking cat. Happy? The cat shook her head. What the hell are you talking about? Its voice was feminine, so he assumed that it was a she. The cat wore a green Gatsby hat and a green blouse-like dress with what it looked like jeans underneath. She wore small little cowboy boots that he guessed was from a dress-up toy bought for 5-year-olds. Her eyes had a pinkish-purple shadow around them and what looked like a sword-shaped earring on her right ear. Sorry, I didn't know Happy had any relatives." She looked at him again. "Who's this Happy you speak of? And why the hell are you in my pad, human?" She rose to smack him in the face with what looked like a guitar. He yelped in pain and stepped back again. "Now answer my question or face my wrath, you pest," she threatened. Naruto finally came out of the shock he was in and cleared his mind. I'm sorry but there has been rumors of this room being haunted. I was offered this room to complete this job. Never did I imagine another cat to be here. The Exceed rose her brows. You've seen another of my kind. Naruto nodded. Happy, Natsu's partner and technically the son of Natsu and Lisana. They had hatched him years before Naruto came to Fairy Tail. Nonetheless, I will not be giving up my only home. The blonde looked at her with a confused expression. You don't have another home? She shook her head. No. Now get out you pesky human monkey. Naruto wasn't surprised at her hostility. He did enter her home after all. But there was a problem, if he didn't do this now, another mage would capture her and take her in. He didn't think this would happen at all, he also didn't want to strip someone of their home. I see I guess I could relate. I also have no other home and I don't have one now. Why don't we share this place? She looked at him as if he were crazy. Why in the hell would I let you do that? She yelled, growing more and more annoyed, if her scowl indicated anything. Because if I left, then another mage will come down here and surely kick you out. Now, I don't want that to happen so how about we share? She looked at him with an exasperated expression. Though she didn't want to admit it, he was right. Her illusions, though strong and witty were clearly inadequate if someone broke in so easily. Damn you human, how did you even get in here? My magic is no joke. Naruto smiled at her. Indeed, it was a powerful illusion. Any mage below B-class level would have surely been fooled. I, on the other hand, am far ahead of that level, being a sage. She took another look at him, trying to gauge his magical level. The Exceed was surprised when she felt the potency of his power, and the amount was quite astounding. Sage? She asked, not knowing the term. The blonde's eyes widened at the slip-up and tried to play it cool. It's a term from my village for those who's attained a certain level of mastery of their magic. Nodding her head in understanding, she went to couch and sat down. Whatever now, I guess I have no choice huh? Fine we'll share, but you had better not rat me out. Naruto rose his hands in a defending gesture and grinned. Ma, I'm not like that. Besides I can cook she narrowed her eyes in disbelief. I don't believe you. Naruto grinned. I can make something if you'd like. Fried shrimp, cooked fish and white rice will do. And don't forget to warm up a sake. Human Naruto was surprised at the sudden request. It was less surprising when he heard her stomach growl very loudly. He found it quite cute when her face flushed and turned from him. Naruto. She shook her head. I don't have any fish paste. Naruto suddenly released a burst of killer intent. His eyes flashed red momentarily but changed back to blue. It means maelstrom damn it. Why does everyone keep saying never mind he started crying and I'm tears and mumbled about how the world was unfair towards him. She was shocked at the outburst and waited for him to finish grumbling for an answer. Naruto is my name the Exceed blinked. Once, then twice, then dropped to the floor and laughed, hard. Her resounding laughter only made his irritation grow, it was so embarrassing and frustrating to have a name with two meanings. After a few minutes of laughing, she stopped but the chuckles were still there. Humans name their children so stupidly he shook his head, he'd give anything to find out how his parents named him. Though he suspected it had to do something with Jiraiya's first book, The Legend of the Gutsy Ninja. What's your name? We will be sharing this place after all she at least had the decency to blush at her rudeness. Name's Taya. Now make me that food. Naruto sighed but grinned. He made 3 clones, one to alert the completion of the mission to Yo, the landlord, and the other 2 to make the food. Half an hour later, they were sitting at the dinner table to chow down. Naruto didn't know why she liked fish so much, but suspected it had to do something with their kind. He often saw Happy around with a fish in his hands. This isn't bad for a human she added. Naruto shook his head. Naruto. Whatever. Sighing, he didn't want to pry, but it was an unavoidable problem at the moment. Have something against humans. She stopped eating suddenly and looked at him with ghostly eyes. You wouldn't understand. He shook his head. Try me. She sighed and put down the shrimp that she was planning on devouring. I just hate humans because they tend to be foolish. Once they attain power, they misuse them. They look down on others and cast them aside like trash. Naruto nodded, knowing how she felt. His childhood was after all, that of a Jinchuriki. Not that he'd ever tell her that. She's right brat. Your kind tends to do such foolishness often. This feline is also hiding something from us. Naruto mentally nodded. I won't pry. Everyone deserves their privacy and what do you mean by us? You haven't helped me at all since I got here. The fox snorted and went back to sleep into his cage. The blonde sighed mentally, he tried to be nice to the fox, but to no avail. The Bijuu was still quite bitter at his defeat to him all those years ago. I understand. I am no fool to the dark side of human nature. She looked into his eyes and saw the hollow look that she once sported on the day she left. The day she cut her ties to her foolish home. Taya nodded, acknowledging his words. She didn't bother to ask him what he meant because she had no interest in it at all. Humans were capable of many sins, and whatever he would say would only add to her bitterness. Naruto saw the mood shift into a gloomy atmosphere and decided to change the subject. So what's with the guitar? She looked at the instrument and smiled softly. It's my passion. Naruto smiled at her changing tone. It was softer and without the cold after effect. Can you play a song? She looked at him as if he were stupid again. Of course I can. Why else would I keep a guitar? That's not what I meant. I was asking if you could play one right now. Forgetting the previous conversation, her eyes softened. No. His eyebrows perked. Why not? 'Cause I don't want to. Oh please, or are you shy? I can understand if you're bad and hesitant to show me your terrible skills. Her face grew red with fury at his tease. Lifting her instrument, she proceeded to slam it against his head for the third time. Fine. She tuned her guitar and started playing in a soft melody. Her voice, which was singing beautifully, sounded so different from her usual tone. Naruto felt his memories flickering from his necklace and entered his mind. Shikamaru, his best friend of the 8 other colleagues of his. The lazy man had been on several missions and supported the blonde when he was down. He also saw Sakura and how they spent their time together. Though she often punched him, they had a lot of fun and laughs together. Those were the good days after he became the Hokage. The soft melody suddenly turned into one of deep sorrow. He saw Sasuke fighting him with all his might. Chidori clashing into his Rasengan, Rasen Shuriken clashing into his Susanoo, and ultimately his hands piercing his stomach. The memory of both of them laid on the dirt, all bloodied and tired after their fight. The song ended with a sorrowful tune. Naruto felt his memories fade back into Tsunade's necklace and sighed. It was truly his greatest weakness. The memories hidden in his necklace, that is. He'd have to make sure that the information never got into the wrong hands or he'll be paying the price. How's that? Naruto nodded at her. She was definitely skilled with the instrument, her fingers or paws flowed over the frets as if it were second nature to her. What's the name? She went into a thinking posture. Past story. 1. Naruto chuckled at the irony. Indeed. She nodded, having the same reaction as him when she first heard the song. It was indeed sorrowful and incredibly emotional. I first heard it from a stellar spirit, then I learned it the day after. Naruto nodded, knowing of what she spoke of. Stellar spirits, like summons, lived in another dimension, and only those with keys could summon them. Though they needed a contract, it was still very useful. Hey. What? She asked him. Join my guild. Her eyes widened. Why? You're very skilled, Taya. Besides, you don't want to be stuck here all day, do you? She nodded her head. She had been here for the first 3 weeks and lived off the food in the fridge. I guess. Naruto chuckled. Great, you can be on my team. Who knows? You might even make friends. She shook her head. I have no interest in that. But it's better than being here all day, like you said. He sighed at her unwillingness to open up. Well, he's dealt with far worse. Alright. So that's a yes. She nodded apathetically. He suddenly ran up to her and locked her into a bone-crushing hug. Yeah. Annoyed by his sudden outburst, she lifted her guitar single-handedly and smashed it against his skull again. Oh. No hugging. He pouted. Oh, but you're so cute. He tried to hug her again, but it only resulted with a guitar to the skull. It didn't stop him, however, when he closed the distance instantly and hugged her, but this time he made sure the guitar was far away. Stupid humans. She yelled mentally to herself while being unable to move her arms. Taya cursed in her mind, the guitar was out of her reach. And that was how Uzumaki Naruto, the Dragon Slayer of the night, met his exceed partner, Taya. Talk about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Magnolia, Business District. Following day. No. Naruto's voice was stern and unwearable. But it was in vain, as the glare he received from his exceed partner nearly made him shiver. Her calculating pink eyes glazed him with absolutely fury from his answer. And why the hell not? The anger was clear in her voice. Naruto tried his best not to flinch at her gaze. Frankly, he was terrified of her gaze. It reminded him of Hinata when some idiot insulted her sister, Hanabi. Never in his life did he ever think the cute, shy Hinata could absolutely break another person. Literally. Forgetting the past, he brought his attention back to the cat in front of him and argued the best he could. It's too expensive. He cried out. For the past hour and a half, she'd been bugging him to buy this old record from the store. Apparently it was impossible to find according to her knowledge. Naruto relented and insisted that the price was far too much, even for someone with his salary. The record was 500,000 jewels, and there was no way in hell he'd buy something that was worth 2 average A-ranked quests. It was totally ridiculous in his opinion, seriously. This is as cheap as it could get, you fool. She slapped him in the face, eliciting a small gasp of pain from the blonde. Boy, that hurts, you damn cat. What's so special about this thing anyways? Her mood made a complete 180 as her eyes looked at the record with nothing short of respect. This record is absolutely legendary and I will never let it fall into another's hand. I must have it. She spoke with intense passion. In the few hours the blonde has known her, it was obvious that music was her ultimate love. Hell, if music was a person, the blonde was sure that she'd marry him. That was a terrible joke, he heard the fox inside him say. Naruto grew a mental tic and slapped the fox, not that it did anything. Shut up. I'm a prankster, not a stand-up comedian. He mentally yelled back, frustrated with the situation. What's in this anyways? He held up the record curiously, only to have it snatched away from Taya in a flash. Don't touch it. You'll destroy its value with your disgusting human hands. Naruto grew more annoyed at her barb. That was a good thing because the people around him were watching them with mild interest and amusement. You see Naruto, once upon a time in this very land called Fiori, there was a stellar spirit that was rumored to be the most beautiful and the most talented singer in the lands. Her beauty and talent was so great that many rich disgusting humans tried to buy her key and have her all to themselves. One of those humans succeeded and made her fulfill all their selfish and perverse fantasies. As the days passed, her sadness grew and grew exponentially, as so did her abuse. Every time she cried, she wrote and recorded a song that contained every single last bit of her emotion, such as anger, bitterness, sorrow, hopelessness, and so on. As the times passed, the greedy human died and she was set free. Free of the terror that is the darkness of humanity. The stellar spirit left her record in this land, hoping that it would change the ways of humanity and their pitiful greed with its beautiful melody. The great stellar spirit was never to be seen again. Halfway through the story, she had already drawn quite a big crowd. They listened to the utter passion in her voice, and some couldn't help but shed tears when they heard of the tragedy. Naruto, himself, was quite amazed at her ability to tell a story. He even felt the Kyuubi's full attention on her, as if he wanted her to continue bashing humans as a whole. He, himself, was quite drawn to the story like everyone else. He watched her raise the record with her paws delicately and looked at it with sadness in her eyes. This record contains some of the most beautiful songs in the world. That is why I will, at any cost, keep this out of the wrong hands. I will not let her abuse go to waste. I will not let her talents go to waste. I will not let this record be destroyed carelessly. I will learn from her pain and distribute it to the world myself. And with that she had Naruto completely convinced on buying it. Taya smirked inwardly, the story was indeed true, and with her natural ability to twist words, she made it sound like the most tragic thing in the world. Naruto sighed, resigning from his argument, and decided to buy the thing. Hopefully, he could convince the master to grant him an S-class mission. Alright, she smiled in victory and licked his cheeks as a thank you like cats would often do. Weird because after all this time, the crowd didn't even think twice about her being a talking cat. After the crowd dispersed much to the confusion of the blonde, whom didn't even notice them there, they decided to finally head to the guild and introduce Taya to everyone. You're really good at telling stories, Taya. He spoke in a soft tone. It was a true story, Naruto. One of the many reasons why I detest humans so much. The blonde sighed, indeed it was a good reason to hate his kind. Not all humans are like that, Taya. Some are even so kind that they would willingly give their very lives to save people they don't even know. While this world is filled with selfish idiots, there are also those whom are still selfless and chivalrous. The Exceed nodded and jumped from the ground to the top of his head with ease. Naruto took off his bandana so she could get more comfy. Purring in delight, she was content with her new bed. Whether or not she noticed it, but within just a day she'd already grown attached to the blonde. It was his greatest skill after all, making friends. I know, but that doesn't change the despicable nature that all humans have in them. Good or bad, darkness lays within them. You understand this, I believe. The blonde nodded, having indeed experienced the darker side of humanity firsthand. Sensing that she didn't want to talk about it any longer, he dropped the subject. Naruto knew it would be hard to change her views on humans, and sometimes he even felt that it was a hopeless endeavor. Nonetheless, he wasn't going to give up until she at least warmed up a bit. She was actually very pleasant company, that is unless you insult her passion. Wake me up when we get there. He nodded and allowed her to comfortably fall asleep on his hair, hoping she didn't screw it up too bad. Not that he minded anyways. Fairy tale. Boy, Natsu. The rosy-headed mage turned his head to look at whomever called his name. He saw his rival, Gray, a black-haired teen whom had a bad habit of stripping off his clothes in public randomly. What? He scowled, the two always picked a fight with one another ever since they've met. The scowl was returned at full force when Gray narrowed his eyes at him. Everyone in the vicinity sighed, it was sadly an often occurrence. You signing up for the tournament? He asked in a crude voice, almost as if he wanted to pick a fight with him. Hell yeah. And I'm gonna win this time. He boasted loudly to the guild. Everyone groaned at the declaration, ever since entering he'd never won once. The winners were usually one of the S-class mages whom were Luxus, Erza, Mira or Fried. Mistgun never participated, but many suspected that he just didn't want to be seen. They also knew that their ace, Gildarts Crive, never participated. That's what you say every year, idiot. Luxus usually crushes you before you get to the semi-finals. The Dragon Slayer's ego deflated at that mention. It was true that the older blonde had crushed him to bits every time they fought, and easily at that. He glared at his rival. What about you, huh? Didn't you lose to him in the first round last year? How long did you last? I think it was for about 6 seconds. The raven-haired boy instantly flushed in anger. He was beaten even before he could pull of his alchemy magic. Most embarrassing day in his life. Well, at least I ain't a punk like you who rushes face first into the opponent. Luxus beat you without lifting a finger. The two glared at each other and continued their daily insult contest. Erza-chan, how's your day been? They heard a voice say from somewhere. Gray and Natsu instantly crushed their desires of fighting and hung their arms around each other's necks, as if indicating that they were buddies. We're best friends, Natsu said nervously, looking around for the red-headed maiden that often beat the crap out of them when they fought each other. Why be best friends, Gray continued, ignoring the chuckles from the background. Pride be damned, Erza punched harder than most men in the guild, including Elfman, the resident whom always boasted about how to be a real man. The two looked around and saw that said woman was nowhere in sight. Laughter was heard from the top floor, everyone lifted their heads to see Gildarts chuckling at their antics. I knew that would be funny. But I didn't expect it to be this funny. They looked at him with wide eyes filled with shock, confusion and betrayal. You tricked us? Natsu yelled. Happy flew up to his head and pointed at the man with an innocent expression. What the hell, man? Don't scare us like that. Gray exclaimed exasperatedly, breathing heavily in an extremely exaggerated tone. Everyone laughed at their expense. It was a known fact that Erza would beat down the two rivals if she ever caught them fighting. Anyways, so I hear you two are in the mage mash again, huh? They nodded with fierce determination. Yeah. Everyone better watch out. Gildarts grinned at his determination. The boy had marvelous potential, and this was a way for him to get more experience. That was all he really needed anyways. That's good, I'll be going in as well, everyone gasped when the words left his mouth. Even Luxus widened his eyes, his blood was boiling at the thought of fighting the guild's strongest mage. Mira had a bloodthirsty smile on her face, like Luxus, she was also excited by the prospect of fighting Gildarts. She chuckled darkly, making her siblings Lysana and Elfman back away from her with comedic fright. Sister is being scary again. She mumbled. Elfman nodded and sighed at Mira. Her takeover magic influenced her greatly, unlike these two, whom were quite normal. Well, Lysana was quite normal. This'll be fun, Mira whispered to herself. Count me in as well. Everyone looked at the entrance and saw Erza standing with what looked like a whole year's worth of luggage behind her. No one even bothered to question her quirk, already being used to the craziness called fairy tale. Hell, the only ones who were remotely normal are Lysana and Levi. Erza-chan, back from your mission already, I see. Gildarts said. Hi, it was only a simple extermination, she said without missing a beat. Her lingering words only made everyone pity her victims. Her magic was beautiful after all, bloody beautiful some might say. So what's this I hear about you joining the mage mash? The elder man sighed. I asked a favor from the master. He said yes, but with the condition of joining. Her eyebrows perked in curiosity. A favor? You'll know after the tournament's done. You guys should train, it's in a week, and I'm sure you all want to have the title of strongest na. While Luxus, Natsu and Gray agreed with his statement, Erza shook her head in the negative. No. I just want to see you fight firsthand. It should be interesting after all. No one has seen Gildarts fight in years and all of a sudden he's entering a tournament. She had to see this, of course. What sane person didn't know of Gildarts' skill? The man declined a spot as one of the 10 saints, and that certainly speaks highly of his magic. I'm nothing special, he grinned sheepishly, while ignoring the looks of exasperation from everyone. They started to chat more about the contest, and everyone was adding their own 2 cents on who'd come out on top. Of course the obvious answer was Gildarts, but some were more optimistic than others. Natsu, for example. That was when Naruto entered the building. Hey Luxus, are the Raijinshu entering? Natsu shouted. The older teen nodded his head. Fried, Evergreen and Bixlow were scheduled to come in tomorrow, so they would probably enter, Luxus thought to himself. Sweet. Naruto rose his eyebrows at his excitement. He decided to enter the conversation with the rest of the guild elites. What's this about? He asked out loud. Natsu turned his head and saw Naruto. Completely ignoring the cat on his head for a moment, he decided to explain. We're having the annual guild mage mash. Mage mash? He asked confused, not know what they were talking about at all. It's a tournament. There's no prize or anything, you get bragging rights though. Gray answered for him. Naruto smiled. Cool, where do I sign up? They pointed at the clipboard laying next to the master, whom was asleep sitting up. Naruto stifled a chuckle at the sight, his master was an incredibly carefree man compared to his former bosses. Walking up to him, he promptly signed his name on the paper. That was when Makarov woke up and took a good look at the top of his head. He blinked twice, then his eyes widened. Then Naruto the blonde looked up and smiled at the elder man. "What's that on your head?" Smiling even further turned towards everyone whom also looked at his head and woke up his new friend. "Boy, Taya, wake up you cutie." They heard a groan from the top of his head and gasped when they saw another happy. Said cat had hearts in his eyes the moment he saw her. "We're here already? I wanted more sleep." Everyone's jaws dropped on the floor. "What?" she asked when she saw everyone staring at her with awe. Taya shook her head. "Humans are weird." That was especially true with the group around her. It's been nearly a full minute and they haven't said a word. The master was the first to speak. "Where did you find her?" Naruto chuckled. "Funny story actually. Hey, do you mind if she joins the guild? She has very strong magic," he said, making the master grin in curiosity. Trying to change the subject. "I'll let it go for now, but I want to hear the story later." He thought to himself as he was eyeing the exceed. He sensed quite an amount of magical within her, unlike Natsu's partner Happy. That meant that she was older and had experience using magic. He chuckled, the boy found a great partner. "Sure, I don't see why not. She's more than welcome, ain't that right?" he asked the guild. Breaking out of their stupor, they all suddenly yelled in agreement. "Boy, where did you find her?" Natsu asked. "What's her name? Where did she come from? Do you want some fish?" Naruto sweat dropped at all the questions, especially the last one since it came from the other resident cat. Maybe love at first sight really did exist, he smiled at the thought. This a shame because the ideal was shot down as soon as he saw the rejection Taya gave him. She was gentle with it though and seemed to let him down lightly. Naruto smirked. She had experience with rejecting other males it seemed. He mentally filed the thought away for future teasing against his new friend. He knew she would beat him, but it would eventually mean that they'll become better friends. Naruto was indeed a masochist at times. "Hey, has anyone seen my team?" He noticed that they were absent for the moment. It wasn't a surprise, they had recently come back from a long air-ranked mission. Apparently, it was a first for Kana and Lucky, so he guessed that they would be resting at home to recuperate their magical and physical energy. Kana called in sick and Lucky's at home resting. Naruto nodded, mentally adding visit Kana and Lucky to his list of things to do for the day. Though only being with them for a short time, he felt very attached to his teammates. Kana was bright and fun to speak with, while Lucky was always sweet and nice to him when they hung out. He loved his team and his guild like family. "I'll be sure to check up on them later." Makarov smiled and nodded. "You do that. I see that you have signed up for the tournament." Naruto. "Piece of advice, you should train physically. While our friends here are mages, they are also very strong physically." Naruto chuckled, confusing the older man. "Don't worry about me, boss. If it's a contest of physical endurance, then there is nothing on this earth that could outlast me." "I see. That is very good to hear, well good luck. It starts in a week." Naruto then lowered his tone so that no one but the elder could hear him. He didn't want anyone listening in on the short talk he was about to have. "Master?" His voice turned serious, the older man raised his eyebrows at the tone. "If it's possible, I would like to speak with you about something. I will wait for the end of the tournaments to talk to you about it though." That drew his interest. The boy had been a mystery to him ever since his joining a month ago. He was loud often but at the same time subtle like a shinobi which made it near impossible to read him. The man had no idea how close his guess was. "Very well. Cool. So who's participating in the tournament?" He rose his voice back to normal and returned to the previous conversation. The final list will be made tomorrow." Nodding and left after giving his thanks. Naruto made his way to a nearby table so he could have a little chat with his new friend. This place is very lively. A bit of music could do this place good." Naruto smiled and nodded, having always been a fan of music. "The guild likes to do a lot of conventional activities. You should participate, it could help you make friends." Taya ignored the last part. "Excellent. I will prepare a guitar arrangement for that then." "Cool. So what do you want to order?" He gave her the menu to look at. The blonde already knew what he was gonna pick, so there was never a need for it. Naruto called the waitress over and her his order. "Beef ramen and a glass of water please." She nodded and looked at the cat that was looking at her expectantly. "A dish of grilled inago, one, another of sashimi and white rice. For beverages, I would like warm sake." Writing the order down, the waitress nodded and immediately left to put in the request. The two sat in a comfortable silence, listening to the ramble the other members were making all around them. Taya studied the guild members silently, she found them loud, annoying and ultimately human. To her, all humans were the same. No matter what their height, race or personality. Trivial stuff like that didn't matter to her because she knew that if the right strings were pulled, they could turn into ugly monsters. She was broken out of her muse when the voice of one of their comrades spoke towards them. Naruto-san. The blonde looked up and saw Erza next to him. Naruto smiled and gestured for her to sit down. Just Naruto is fine. We're all friends here. She nodded at him. The red-headed girl was out on missions fairly often, so there was never a chance for them to talk. Thanks for that. I, myself, don't usually allow my comrades to call me with formalities. So, how can I help you? Erza only took a second to gather her thoughts. I heard that you formed a team with Lucky and Kana. The blonde nodded in confirmation. So how have you guys been holding up so far? Though I take S-class missions, I find the A-class sections a bit tiring as well. Well, Kana's been doing great. She's a great fighter, and those cards have been quite useful in many situations. Lucky is the same, while not a great fighter, she makes it up with her intellect. That was the general idea of his team. Brains, bronze and balance. They were a team with many skills and specialties which would ultimately award them with many job options in the future. That's great. Erza said in relief. She had been a bit worried for her friends Kana and Lucky. She knew them and thought of them like sisters from the guild. Erza was close to everyone in Fairy Tail, whether as friends or as comrade in arms. Kana, being a veteran member of the guild like Erza, was close to the armored woman through their friendship and guild status. Lucky was like her little sister, fun to play with and talk with too. Noticing the girl's relief, Naruto decided to add on, "Ma, don't worry. As long as I'm there, they won't be hurt. I promise." Erza widened her eyes a fraction by his ability at reading her, but smiled nonetheless. "Thank you. Though they can take care of themselves, I will trust you with their well-being, Naruto." The blonde nodded with a smile and gave her a thumbs up. "Don't worry, I am quite strong myself. Nothing short of an army of immortal freaks can stop me." Erza nodded, not realizing the truth in his words. She was about to say something, but not before the waitress came over with their orders. "Itadakimasu." Both Naruto and Taya said in unison. Naruto started eating as did his cat, while Erza was trying to start another conversation. "So I understand that you'll be in the tournament." The blonde nodded and grinned. "Well, it sounds like fun. I wonder who's participating though." Erza shook her head. "The usual 10 plus you since Gildarts whom usually doesn't competes. Kana's sick so I doubt that she'll be in this time which means you're the 10th. Erza said before continuing. "Gray, Natsu, Luxus, Fried, Bixlow, Mira, Evergreen, Gildarts, you and myself, it seems will be in this time." Naruto whistled appreciatively at the list. It was a contest of Fairy Tail's finest. The Raijinshu were there, as well as Mira the leader of Team Takeover, Gildarts, the strongest of the guild, Luxus the S-class magician, Gray the ice alchemist, Salamander Natsu, and last but not least the Titania Erza herself. And you can't forget the Dragon of the West himself. Quite the list. I've heard of the Raijinshu's reputation from the south, and I must say that they sound pretty impressive. Erza nodded in agreement. They're a great team with a great leader. Fried, whom is an S-class magician like myself, has made quite a strong name for himself. Even I have trouble crossing blades with him. Well, this sounds great. I haven't had a good fight in a while. You sound really confident in yourself. Erza replied. I should be. Any mage worth their salts has to if they want to be part of Fairy Tail. There was no arguing with that logic, Erza thought to herself amused. For the few minutes of talking to him, she realized that there was more to him than meets the eye. So what kind of magic do you use? Naruto smirked. I use wind's techniques. Naruto replied vaguely. Erza narrowed her eyes at him suspiciously. She caught his smirk and didn't like it one bit. Is that it? Naruto shook his head. If you want to know my powers, the best way to find out is to beat them out of me during the tournament. She nodded, he wanted to make a big show and entertain the crowd. That was perfectly fine to her. She liked to do the same. I see, well you'd better be careful. Underestimating someone could be your downfall. Naruto chuckled at the comment. The same could be said to anyone. Well, it has been nice chatting with you. It seems the new pile of missions are in. Thank you for your time. Naruto waved his hands dismissively. No need for that. If you want to talk then anytime's fine. She nodded and left after saying her goodbyes. He looked at the time and saw that it was indeed the schedule for the mission post-arrivals. Feeling a familiar presence on his head, he looked to his side and saw that all the fish that his cat ordered were gone. Are you done? Taya nodded. Thanks for the meal, now you wanted to introduce me to your teammates. Naruto nodded and proceeded to walk out of the building, intent on seeing his sickly teammates. Kana's apartment. Lucky? What are you doing here? Naruto asked. He had just arrived to check on Kana and was given a surprise when the violet-haired girl answered instead. We're roommates. She deadpanned, suddenly making Naruto feel stupid all of a sudden. If he had known that, then recruiting them would have been way easier. Oh okay. Well, I never knew. I came to check on you guys, can I come in? The violet-haired teen nodded and smiled. Naruto walked in and was surprised by the size of the place. The room was about the size of his room back home. The walls were painted a light shade of lavender, effectively matching the curtains which were of the same color. They had a sizable couch that looked to be a pull-out bed type. The kitchen was conveniently placed next to the hall of the bedrooms, making for easy midnight snacks. It was very homey, in his opinion. Nice place. She smiled at him. Thanks and please stay quiet, Kana's asleep. The moment she said that, the door from the back suddenly opened, revealing their third teammate. She was wearing a plain white t-shirt and violet-colored panties. Naruto was suddenly glad that Jiraiya had taught him self-control on their training trip because if he hadn't, he'd be blushing pretty hard right about now. Because there was hardly a woman in Konoha that could look that good with just a t-shirt and panties. Well besides Anko and Kurenai of course, but they were like in their 30s. Naruto. What are you doing here? Kana said drowsily, she was still half asleep. Lucky sighed at her. I just came to check up on you too. I heard you were sick. Kana smiled at his consideration, she had woken up in the morning with a high fever and headache. Kana. Go back to bed, you're still sick. Lucky interrupted, she had spent the entire day trying to keep her in bed, but to no avail. The woman was restless and easy to stir at times. Sorry, Kana grinned sheepishly. I also came by to introduce you two to our new member. They rose their brows in curiosity at that mention. Where? The girls asked simultaneously. Naruto chuckled and tapped the top of his head, confusing both girls. Their eyes widened when they say a blue cat whom, to them, looks familiar to Happy, Natsu's partner. It's a pleasure to meet you both. My name is Taya. Like Kana, the Exceed was half asleep from the journey to their home. Hi. Lucky exclaimed all of a sudden, knocking her roommate out of her stupor. Whoa, hello there. Name's Kana. Kana Alberona. Her eyes were still wide, obviously not expecting the development. I'm Lucky. Lucky Oilieta. Naruto knew that their reactions were to be expected, which was why his was so damn funny. As so the violet-haired teen said in an attempt to start a conversation. Do you two like music? The Exceed said apathetically. Yes. They answered at the same time, though confused with the nature of the question. Taya gave a thin smile at their response. Then we'll get along just fine. Naruto sighed, he knew she didn't really have anything else to relate to. Well, it's getting late. Before I go, I'm gonna tell you guys that I entered the Mage Mash tournament. Kana smirked at him. Aiming for the top already, huh? The blonde nodded. Good luck with that. She chuckled, well if you excuse me, I'll be catching up on my sleep. Naruto smiled at her. Night. She said before closing the door. Well, I'll see you two tomorrow. Just as he was about to leave, he remembered something his master had told him long ago. Pulling out his gourd, he let a drop of his dragon's sake spill into a bottle of water he had with him. Give this to Kana, it'll help her go to sleep. Lucky nodded and headed towards their room. Opening the door to leave, he silently closed it back. Wishing for the well-being of his teammates. Magnolia streets. 30 minutes after. So what do you think? The blonde asked. They're pure. Taya answered truthfully, she had been observing the two during their meeting. She was searching for two things that could only be seen through eye contact. Those with a dark past and a grieving soul with a mask of happiness, or someone who was pure and kind due to their normal life. Naruto sighed happily at her answer. Good. Taya tilted her head in confusion. I plan to keep it that way. Unknown. Time unknown. A huge sigh could be heard. Well, to the normal humans, it would be huge anyways. So you've finally decided to show up, huh? A booming voice spoke from the top of what looked like a meeting room for kings. There were seats carved from what looked like Greek marble, and the entire room looked to be a tower with no walls. The whole building was supported by huge pillars, and the setting of the building was what a human being would call heaven. The sky. Sorry, I was busy you see. The reply was smug and completely unnecessary, which elicited the chuckles of a few from the back. Black eyes met blue in a fierce clash, they stared each other down for a whole minute before giving up. You never changed, Tradantes. Said Dragon smirked at his superior. And you're as pompous as ever, king. Unknown. Darkness is not always a pleasant place to be. It is often known to shroud a person's vision, change their minds, affect their decisions and ultimately destroy them. This is both meant literally and figuratively. Mankind has always had a sinister nature within them, whether for good intentions or bad. Justice is often misused and made as an excuse for dark behavior. People commit crimes in the name of justice, which can only be described as the fools of the litter. This has been a problem since the beginning of time. But not for these individuals. No, these guys are just plain bad. Not a good intention in sight for any of them. In a room that could only be described as dark and gloomy sat three people. Each one, unsurpassed masters in their magical abilities and was formerly praised as the best mages in their times. Their faces effectively covered in darkness, making it difficult to see their facial expressions. The corner of the rooms were lit by dim candles, with what looked like a medieval-styled room consisting of weapons on the sides, a huge round table with what looked like a map of the world. A man entered, looking nervous with a subtle shake in his steps. He had black hair and brown eyes, though filled with life, were also filled with fear and uncertainty. "Have you located your target?" The one in the middle said in a ghostly tone, a tone that sent shivers through the body of the man. Composing himself, he replied confidently. "Yes, sir. The one you seek is indeed in Magnolia as we speak. What are your orders, sir?" There was a small pause indicating that the man was thinking of a solution. As the minutes dripped by, he grew more and more nervous. The sheer aura of the three in front of him were nearly suffocating his very being. "Send the Valkyries. That man will not leave Magnolia alive." The messenger nodded and left the room. As soon as the coast was clear, he sighed in relief and dropped to his knees gasping. Just standing in their presence tired him out, he could only imagine the poor souls that got in the way of their ambitions. Back inside the meeting room, the other three were discussing their current mission. "Is it wise to send the Valkyries? You know just as well as I do that they stand no chance," a voice said from the right. It was slightly feminine, but was incredibly difficult to tell with due to the deep voice. "I know, do you question my plans?" was the reply of the other man. The woman sighed, tired of being in the room already. She had better things to do than to brood around in one room with this old man who seemed a bit on the chaotic side. Then again, it didn't matter to her because they all had the same goals. "Do as you wish, Hades." She suddenly vanished into thin air, leaving almost no evidence of her ever being there. A sigh could be heard from the right which caught the attention of the man in the middle. "What a waste of time, why did you ask me to be here again?" a masculine voice said, the annoyance clear in his voice. "My apologies, brother. I just wanted to make sure this all worked out. I needed to speak with you about our strategies." The other man shook his head, almost in a disapproving manner. "Is this man really worth the trouble?" "Yes, Ivan Drayer has crossed us for the last time." Fairy Tale. Evergreen v Naruto. Natsu v Luxus. Erza v Bixlow. Mira v Gray. Gildarts v Fried. The official matchups had been placed on the top of the mission board. As soon as it was released, everyone immediately started placing bets on whom would come out on top. There were no bets on Gildarts' matches due to everyone assuming his immediate victory, which wasn't the slightest bit offending to Fried. Even he thought he didn't stand a chance, but Gildarts tried to reassure him of his abilities, saying that no one was invincible. "Alright guys, this is how it's gonna work. Well, you bums know how it works, but for those who don't, I'll explain," the master said, glancing at Naruto whom looked grateful at him. The Mage Mash is a once-a-year, mini-tournament that is meant to, in a sense, copy the GFW. Naruto's face grew in confusion at the mention of GFW, but shrugged it off when the master gave him "I'll tell you later" face. It will be held at night 5 days from today. The first round matches will start at around 7 p.m. You guys will have to be there in time or risk disqualifying. Everyone nodded, waiting for him to continue. No one noticed Naruto's brief dark smirk. "The first round has a few rules, but thankfully they are not too restricting, so be thankful, you crazy bums." The guild chuckled at that comment. "There are only 2 things worth mentioning. The first is that you are not allowed to use forbidden magic. For example, blood and death magic are forbidden, and if you are caught, then you will be sentenced to imprisonment by the council." The mention of forbidden magic sparked his curiosity a bit. His teacher had told him of a few, but he'd never heard of blood magic before. Tradantes probably didn't deem it too threatening to tell me how, he thought to himself, sighing mentally at the dragon's antics. He was broken out of his muse when the Makarov continued. "The second is that the matches will be limited to 25 minutes, and if there is no winner by knockout, there will be judges to determine the winner." Naruto rose his eyebrows. "And how will that work out?" The master grinned sheepishly. "Well, it doesn't happen too often. The last time a decision had to be made was when Mira and Erza were duking it out last year. The two had the decency to blush at that mention. It was indeed a long match, clothes were torn, words were said, anger exploded, and the end result were 2 half-naked teens on the ground. Perverts watching were all quite pleased that day. The guys on the other hand smiled inwardly, all thinking the same thing. Best match in history. Naruto caught the looks on the men's faces and grew more and more curious. Damn, I shoulda came here last year. He knew what those faces meant, they were thinking very Jiraiya-like things. The blonde had already put 2 and 2 together. Anyways, 3 people from the council will be judging, so if there was a decision, they will make it. Naruto nodded, understanding the logic. The short elder took a second to catch his breath and speak again. The winners of the first round will obviously go to the finals. I know some of you are thinking along the lines of it would be unfair because someone will get a buy round, but that is not the case because we of Fairy Tail are what people say extreme. Naruto tilted his head, obviously the one who was thinking that. The master had a mischievous smile on his face the moment he said that, indicating that he had something cooked up. Instead of having 3 rounds with one person having a bye, I have come up with a different solution. Actually, my old teammate came up with it to entertain the crowd. The blonde was growing impatient, already wanting the man to get on with it. His plan was to make the tournament with 2 rounds. The winners of round 1 will be put up against each other in a free-for-all fight. A 5-man woman rumble, you could say. Naruto's eyes widened, obviously not expecting that. His shocked face turned to one of sheer excitement, his body shivering at such an idea. One more thing, this fight is kinda special in a way. You see, it is actually the semi-finals. Naruto waited for him to continue. When a mage is deemed unable to fight in this round, there will be a 5-minute intermission whenever one goes down. After the break ends, the cycle will continue until 2 are left, as you can see. When it comes to that, a 10-minute break will be held so the competitors will have time to rest up. That is considered to be the true finals. It wasn't as complicated as it sounded, Naruto thought. So basically, they do a 5-way battle until 2 are left and those 2 are the finale. Wow. He breathed out. Yeah, I had the same reaction. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Makarov said with a smile. Damn right it does. I love it. He said, with everyone behind him yelling in agreement. Yup, so be ready. It's on Sunday. Everyone nodded and scattered to do whatever they did. Naruto left the guild to go home and everyone else continued with what they did. 30 minutes later, Fairy Tail's roof. The Raijinshu officially made this place their meeting spot ever since the master gave them permission to take S-ranked missions. While Fried was considered S-rank by his peers, he was actually the only one amongst his teammates to be on the actual level. Evergreen, while witty and clever, was not strong enough to be put on the level of S. Same with Bixlow and his puppet soul-styled magic. Ahaha, I feel sorry for you too. Bix, you have to fight the Titania Erza. The masked man snorted in response, feeling a bit offended by the lack of faith his friend had. Please, I can totally take her. Yeah. Shaking her head at his arrogance, she looked at Fried and almost pitied the man. Fried, you will be facing Gildarts on the other hand. Bixlow grew quiet at that mention, pitying his leader for his lack of luck. Fried chuckled and waved his hands dismissively. You two will eventually fight him anyways. Not like it matters, Gildarts will be the winner. It's obvious to everyone around. He replied calmly, without missing a beat. Evergreen shook at that thought, she didn't want to be the victim of Gildarts' crash magic. True. Hey, do you guys know anything about that Naruto kid? He's my first round opponent. Bixlow laughed. Why? You worried? He's just some rookie that came here a month ago, you shouldn't have too much trouble. The glasses-wearing woman smirked at the comment, feeling her self-confidence grow. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's just some kid, right? Fried sighed at her, she was even more arrogant than Bixlow. He was glad that they made him leader, or rather, Luxus made him leader because he was certainly the open-minded one of the trio. Aren't you the one who scolds others about their arrogance? She blushed at Fried's claim. Why yeah, you're right. I'll take him seriously. Fried nodded, satisfied by the answer. You better, he's much better than he lets on. The woman looked at him curiously, obviously waiting for him to continue. Fried shook his head at her. Luxus only said to be wary of him. They were all confused at that. But if their boss told them to be careful, then they would. None of them had no idea how right Luxus was, in fact they didn't have a clue. Denbari Onsen, Naruto's place. After a long, tiring week, there is nothing better than an onsen to soothe one's mind and soul. The water was at the perfect temperature, not too hot and not too cold for his tastes, which he appreciated immediately. The bath was relaxing all the muscles on his body, nearly making him fall asleep in the process. The blonde smiled when he heard a groan right next to him. His friend, Taya, had also taken a liking to the place. You know, this is the men's side, Taya. The Exceed grunted and turned away from him, not even bothering to make eye contact. I'm a cat, not a human. I have no interest in seeing what human females would. Naruto chuckled at that, he was after all only teasing. Geez, I was kidding. Man, I love this place. It's so peaceful. Taya nodded in agreement. She found the place to be quite amazing as well, with the sounds of nature around the place and a small waterfall to make you feel calmed. This was heaven. Too bad about the price though. It's expensive to be in here because Anna Dono is so strict on paying rent. She said that I was a cheap freeloader that goaded her husband into making my stay here free for 6 months. The woman scares me at times. The Exceed chuckled at the memory. Asakura Anna, wife to the landlord, Asakura, was often the one in charge of collecting rent from paying customers. After hearing the deal Naruto made with her husband, she was naturally upset at the bargain but lived with it. Shouldn't you be practicing for that tournament? Well, I detest humans, even I find a few of them to be quite formidable. Naruto shook his head. Nah, I've mastered my style of magic a while back. The only thing I have trouble with is the final technique my master showed me, and I highly doubt it will ever come to that. Taya raised her brows at the claim. A master? It took years for one to be a true master at what they did, Taya had thought. Forgive my bluntness, but I do not believe you. How in the world could someone as young as you be a master? It takes years to master magic. The only master I've seen are ancient dragons of old and your current guild master, Makarov. Naruto chuckled. I had a great master. And may I ask who your teacher is? I may know him. Though I may not look it, but I used to travel the world often as a bard. Naruto grinned thinly at her. I totally believe you about the bard part. I mean, you do love music. She grinned proudly. I don't see any harm in telling you, but you must not tell anyone else. I want this to be a surprise to everyone. She nodded and waited for him to continue. He took a deep breath and smiled. My master was Tradantes, the traveler of the night and the real dragon of the west. The exceed widened her eyes considerably. Not only did she recognize the name, but the surprise came more from the sheer reputation the dragon had. As a bard, she'd heard many stories of the dragon of the west. There were countless tales on how the mighty Tradantes would descend from the night sky and shred apart fools who dared enter his domain. His roar would claim many lives from the killer intent alone, he would flap his wings and blow away buildings with hurricanes, he would command the shadows and use them to reap hell against his opponents. So you could understand her shock. The stories of Tradante were often used to scare little children to sleep. For example, one could say don't stay up too late or Tradantes will come eat you in your sleep and the children would believe them. Noticing her shock, he waved his hands at her face. Hello awake there? He said amused. Why you know Tradantes? She asked rhetorically. Naruto nodded. It was hard for her to believe, but the honesty in his voice got through to her. Do you have any idea just how feared that dragon is? The exceed exclaimed in his face, never in her life would she have believed that the legendary dragon would have a student. Nope, he's annoying but feared maybe. I've only fought him seriously once and he destroyed me where I stood. I was known to be a fierce warrior back in the days before I met him, and even with all my might, I only managed to push him past his first restraint. He said with admiration and respect laced in his voice. I didn't use my demon cloak, but it wouldn't have changed much, the technique leaves me defenseless after it wears down. I was arrogant and thought sage mode would suffice. How wrong was I? He thought as his hands unconsciously rubbed an invisible scar that the dragon had awarded him for his efforts. Of course it had healed a long time ago, but he still felt it. Only anti-dragon attacks can harm a dragon. Rasen Shuriken was the only technique that harmed him. Not to mention I hit him twice with it. They don't kid when they say only dragon slayers could slay dragons. He had that power now, the power to defeat dragons. To this day, he never understood it. Why would a dragon teach a human to slay its own kind? There was no logic at all. How many restraints does he have? Taya asked, finally snapping out of her shock. Tradantes limits himself to 3 restraints. Though I pushed him past his first, I was damn close at forcing him to his second. He's far too powerful for me to fight. He answered after a moment of thought. You must have been powerful to push a dragon such as him. Compared to the other dragons, he's considered to be on the top tier. The only ones I can think of that can match him are Fire Dragon, Igneal and Grandine the Sky Dragon. It is quite possible for you to beat him if you trained harder. Naruto shook his head. Nah, I would be hard-pressed to beat him if he were dead serious. I honestly don't think there's a human on this planet that can defeat him fair and square. The sheer amount of energy he had astounded even myself, whom was known to have an abnormal amount of magical energy. Taya nodded in agreement. Well, you are correct in most of your observations except one. Naruto looked at her curiously, wondering what she would say. There is a human that could defeat him, fortunately he's been gone for years. He was confused at first before realization dawned upon him. Ah, I forgot about him. Zarif, the ancient. My master told me about him. The blonde shivered at the stories he was told. It took a while to convince his master to tell him about Zarif, but he eventually got to him by exchanging stories. Flashback. Zarif. Tradantes looked from his student to the night sky, memories of the man called Zarif filling his thoughts. He remembered the fierce sieges that he led against the council and their armies, the living demons he summoned from the underworld that had completely ravaged the cities, the thousands of corpses he used as spell ingredients, the amount of humans that was slain by the man. Even for a dragon such as he, it was a terrifying thing to watch. Tradantes smiled and looked at the man whom he looked as a student and friend. Naruto had more potential than anything, human, exceed, dragon or demon. Zarif of old, the most powerful mage in the history of Fiori, the Dark Wizard. He was the supreme master of all types of living magic, a forbidden art. The dragon spoke in a serene tone as he looked at the blonde. Naruto was waiting for him to continue, he was always interested in stories. What was he like? He was truly a monster to behold. The man was the student to the previous most powerful mage in the world. No one knows what happened, no one knows how, but Zarif killed him. The battle lasted for many days but he survived. He took his master's staff and used it to lay attack after attack against the Council of Magi. Makarov, the current master of Fairy Tail, fought him to a standstill for 6 hours, then lost valiantly. Luckily for him, 9 other mages arrived just in time to help him fight off the man. Together, they were able to push him back and seal him into a hidden prison. Those 10 mages were awarded the title of Saint after the massive battle and were then given a guild of their own. A few have died over the years, but the title of Saint lives on. Naruto had a look of amazement stretched all over his face. He had a stupid smile on Ho's face that indicated his excitement and looked as if he was about to explode. Wow, that is definitely going in my top 5 favorite stories of all time, right next to the 4th Hokage sealing the Kyuubi and the rise of the 7th Hokage. He said, nodding to himself. It was a known fact that Naruto liked to brag about his rise to greatness. Though he usually left his childhood out of it since he didn't want to sound too angsty and sad. Naruto liked to tell stories of adventure. Besides, no one would understand the blight of a Jinchuriki, so there was no point in telling anyone of its terror. Only a Jinchuriki can understand the loneliness of a Jinchuriki, no words in the world could grasp the feeling. Tradantes laughed out loud at his student's declaration. In Fiore, that story is legendary. Why don't you tell me about this Hokage you keep telling me about? We had a deal, I tell you one story, you tell me one. He said seriously. Naruto smiled a brilliant smile and prepared his own tale. The 7th Hokage, whose name is unknown, was known to be the most powerful shinobi in the world. His awesomeness was unsurpassed, his might was legendary, his smile made crying babies laugh with a joy that could only be seen every once a decade. He grew up a lonely orphan, but that never, ever stopped him from attaining his dream of being Hokage. Determined to prove those who wronged him, he fought and fought until he was able to rise to the top. When he was 12, he fought and won against one of the 9 great Jinchuriki, the fabled demon containers. The battle was long and cruel, but to save his precious ones, he went all out and summoned thousands of clones by his side. When the Jinchuriki transformed into a giant tanuki, he summoned his own giant steed to mount and fought the demon to a standstill for many moments. The battle ended with the 7th as the winner and he returned to his village a young hero. But that was only the start of his journey to the top. He's rescued princesses from evil, saved priestesses from demons, defeated armies that dared stood in his way to success. By the time he was 17, he achieved his childhood dreams of love and respect. His reign lasted for 6 wonderful years and in that time, his village flourished. The economy bloomed beautifully and peace came. He finished and wiped the tears in his eyes. Yes, he cried at his own story. He didn't tell Tradantes that it was actually he that was in the story, but Naruto had a feeling the dragon knew anyways. It wasn't very difficult to put 2 and 2 together for him. What an amazing tale, you should write a book. The dragon responded with a ear-shattering laugh. Well, I've been thinking about it. Well, a story for a story, right? The dragon nodded. Indeed. Flashback end. So what will you do? Taya asked, breaking Naruto out of his memories. The Exceed sighed at her partner's habit of spacing out. The tournament. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Ma, don't worry about it. The only ones whom I see as a challenge are Gildarts and Luxus. Whilst Erza is strong, she is no match for me. It is the same for Mira and everyone else, I have the ultimate defense for both physical and magical attacks. He replied confidently, which brought a look of wonder to the Exceed. Is that so? Naruto nodded in confirmation. Just wait and see. I don't call myself the Dragon of the West simply because I thought it sounded cool. Few days later. Tournament day. Naruto walked to Fairy Tail with a calm demeanor. He was thinking about the file he had read on Gildarts and was absolutely confused by the vague description of his magic. All it had said was crash. He spent a few hours thinking about the possibilities but was ultimately stumped. What the hell does crash magic look like? He muttered to himself. Oh? Thinking ahead already? He heard a voice say from beside him. Tilting his head, he saw one of the lesser famous member of the guild. It was Mikao, he specialized in fire magic and transformations. You're Mikao. Kana told me about you, Wasp. The blonde replied cheerfully. Well, I heard you talking to yourself and I thought I could help you. The older man said, making the blonde rub the back of his head sheepishly. Ma, you heard that? Yeah, well I guess I could tell you. Gildarts' crash techniques can destroy any matter. Yeah, bit vague, but it's better than nothing, right? Naruto grinned and thanked him. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. No problem, but don't get your hopes up. I've heard of your wind magic from Kana, but it won't be enough to beat him. Besides, you've got Evergreen in the first round and she ain't no pushover. One of the lessons that was taught to him was to never underestimate anyone, though he never had this problem, it was still important. I know. Thanks man, be sure to watch. I promise you it'll be a good fight. With that, Naruto ran off. Mikao shook his head and chuckled. Kid so young. Wait, I'm young too. Yeah. 33 ain't that old. He kept telling himself. 2 hours before the start. Fairy Tail lobby. Yo Naruto. The blonde was trying to catch some sleep before the start of the matches. He didn't feel the need to take any jobs for the day since he felt it would only tire him. Kana. Feeling better? She nodded and smiled. Yup, dunno what you put in that drink, but it was great. Slept like a baby. He chuckled at that. His dragon sake was no joke, not only did it taste great, it was also a great medicine. Thanks, I'll tell you about it some other time. Where's Lucky? She'll be here by the time the matches start. He nodded. That's great. But I'm so bored. Time moves too damn slow. Chuckling at her teammate's antics, she patted him on the back in an attempt to appease him. The blonde turned out to be not only a great comrade, but also a great friend. He helped her out with a lot of things, and not to mention that he was a very heavy drinker. Well, what are you gonna do? She asked him. Naruto went into a drinking posture for a few minutes, then snapped his fingers at a conclusion. We have a few hours, let's get a drink. She rose her eyebrows at him. You're gonna get drunk before the tournament. Naruto laughed and waved his hands dismissing her question. Don't worry about me, Evergreen won't last 5 minutes against me. He said confidently, though some would say overconfident it was still legit. Is that so? She asked skeptically. Kana had seen the glasses-wearing woman fight and thought she was damn impressive. Without skipping a beat, Naruto nodded. You haven't seen me fight seriously before so it isn't a surprise. I have other tricks besides wind magic you know that threw her for a loop, but it wasn't surprising. Anytime she'd seen him fight, he always had some stupid-looking grin on his face that indicated his silly nature rather than a serious one. Alright if you say so. She finished loudly, having somehow imagined him winning. Though she was a bit hesitant to believe his claim, it didn't matter. Like everyone else, she would have to wait and see. Good, now let's get a drink. Grabbing her hand, he dragged her to the guild bar. How ironic, usually I'm the one that drags someone to the bar, she thought happily to herself. There was never a dull moment whenever hanging out with a whiskered teen, she figured out long ago. He was unpredictable, which was a great thing. But she wondered just how unpredictable he could be. Maybe he'll be a shocker in the Mage Mash, she hoped. Local stadium. 2 hours later. Naruto. A voice spoke, breaking the blonde from his sleep. Are you alright? He saw the master say in a worried tone, the old man sure was nice to care for such a trivial thing. I'm fine, a little sober he lied through his teeth, he was drunk 30 minutes ago and had finally became sane just a minute ago. So he was actually quite tipsy. Damn fox, fixed this already. The Kyuubi was asleep so he didn't bother commanding his chakra to cure him. Though Naruto mastered his chakra, didn't mean that he could take it at will. The fox still had to grant him the power. Okay, remember, you're up first. He told him before facing the crowd. It was beautiful night and was a perfect setting for a Mage Mash tournament. The stars were alive in the candlelight and everyone was present. He sensed Mistgun's presence somewhere among the crowd but didn't bother looking for him, the masked man probably wanted to see how strong the blonde was. Ladies and gentlemen of Magnolia, welcome to this year's annual Mage Mash. He yelled out to the crowd electing a huge cheer from them. The crowd was huge, everyone from the city was there. The Mage Mash event was the most popular thing to happen since mages. The tension was in the air, Luxus looked at Gildarts with fire in his eyes, willing to prove himself as a great mage rather than being the grandson of Makarov. He had a huge shadow cast upon him, one that he couldn't surpass easily. Erza also glanced at the taller man and acknowledged his presence. She hadn't planned on entering this year, but once she heard Gildarts entered, she immediately changed her mind. Erza respected those whom were strong and just, and to her Gildarts was both to the extreme. The red-headed woman turned her head and saw Mira shaking in excitement, probably having trouble containing herself. Alright. Everyone excluding Evergreen and Naruto go to the sidelines. The master yelled. Everyone complied naturally, and all eyes were on the two that stood down one another. Everyone was hyped to see the match because one of the competitors was a member of the famous Raijinshu. Evergreen was infamous for her fairy-like techniques and eye techniques. Naruto himself was famous, but not as much as the woman in front of him. A few hidden criminals who were watching him acknowledged his strength because most of his fame was spread through the underground world of criminals rather than the public world. Evergreen would have been totally hyped if not for one thing. Are you drunk? She sneered angrily. Naruto looked at her and scowled. No. All eyes went to him. I'm tipsy, he mumbled pathetically and grinned, making some people from the crowd laugh. And with that all hell broke loose as Evergreen turned red with anger. She hated being underestimated and it was worse when some rookie did that. No one in the crowd caught what happened, but the match was over before it started. The Dragon of the West had reaped its first victim. Magnolia Stadium. Silence was the only thing in the air as the crowd was witnessing the fight below. Not a single person could blink as they were utterly confused by what had just happened moments. Evergreen, the apparent crowd favorite, had just went down in mere seconds. Naruto hadn't moved or even flinched, he just stood in his spot calmly, albeit a little tipsy. The S-classed mages whom were watching widened their eyes in surprise, obviously not expecting the turn of events. What happened to Evergreen? Natsu asked, shaken by the development. The betting odds were in favor of Evergreen completely. Naruto stood there, not even looking like he was trying to fight whilst Evergreen was on her knees, completely in pain from her own attack. I don't know, Erza responded, also shocked by scene. Beside them, Luxus scoffed, completely disappointed by his colleague's lack of insight. But he couldn't blame her, knowing that she didn't know his abilities like he did. Just watch again, Natsu, maybe you'll learn something. He said to them, making everyone narrow their eyes. Gildarts sighed at the boy's rudeness. Ma, don't be so mean, Luxus. He's not quite as experienced as you know. Natsu rose his brows, still confused. It was very clever though. Who woulda thought? A dark horse in this tournament. Gildarts thought to himself. His years of experience had been able to catch the trick Naruto had used to put the woman where she was right now. The ground. Flashback. I'm tipsy, he mumbled pathetically and grinned, making some people from the crowd laugh. And with that, all hell broke loose as Evergreen turned red with anger. She hated being underestimated and it was worse when some rookie did that. Wing magic. Erza. Summoning wings from her back, she then flew into the air to obtain the advantage. She noticed that he still hadn't moved and was growing angrier by the second. Bastard. Never underestimate me. Charging blindly above him and unleashed her signature attack with haste, not noticing Naruto's dark smirk. Fairy bomb. Gremlin. Unleashing a barrage of dust towards him, she watched with sadistic pleasure when she ignited them. Well, she would have if they didn't go off next to her instead. She was cut off when her dust somehow appeared next to her. Trying to cancel her spell but failed as the bombs immediately blew. Everyone watched in confusion since in 1 second the dust bombs were next to her rather than the blonde she aimed for. Ma, in the words of my old sensei. He said, smirking darkly at her. Don't let anger consume you or I just might turn your technique against you, Ms. Evergreen. Then flashback. Naruto watched her fall down and landed on the ground with a thud sound. The silence of the audience pleased him greatly, especially since he asked Taya to put all their money on him, since he knew everyone had betted on his opponent. Oh yeah. He was gonna be a rich man by the time this was over. He was definitely getting a flat screen after this or maybe a new couch. He could get his box, but the PlayStation 3 was more appealing. Wait's box has more games and they have that new. Boy. He heard an angry voice say, breaking him out of his muse. Smiling when he saw her stand up, he waved. Yo, glad you survived. Didn't want the match to end too fast. After all, I am a great crowd pleaser. Ain't that right? He yelled cheerfully whilst giving the audience a thumbs up. Everyone broke out of their stupor and started cheering for him. Hell yeah. Naruto heard Kana and Lucky scream from their seats. He blew kisses in their direction and bowed comically, not noticing one of their blushes. Not hard to miss when every girl in their direction blushed as well. What did you do? She asked, barely able to stand on her feet. Not once in 5 years has she ever been hit so hard and by her own attack no less. It was a mockery to her skills, the skills accumulated from years of hard work and planning. Why don't you try again and you might see what happens, he told her cheekily. It was obviously a trap so she didn't go for it, opting to figure out his tricks later. No matter, she gave him a sexy smirk and removed her glasses to show off her dark eyes. Naruto rose his brows and smiled childishly, figuring out her gesture. Ah, I see. You were so distracted by my handsomeness that you didn't notice my trick. It's alright. Besides, it's not very difficult to fall for this. The blonde rose his arms to the crowd and flexed his biceps, effectively making nearly every civilian girl squeal with delight. Evergreen flushed with anger and surprise, making Bixlow and Fried chuckle silently on the sidelines. Erza and Mira laughed at their comrades' complete embarrassment while Luxus just smirked at the effective taunt. The master grinned at the blonde's ability to please the crowd and just applauded him mentally for the show. Natsu and Gray were rolling on the ground laughing while holding their stomachs to ease the pain they were suffering. Gildarts just chuckled and shook his head, amused by the boys' antics. They also felt a bit of sympathy towards Evergreen though. In the crowds, Lucky and Kana just laughed along with everyone else in the guild, whom were all grinning like idiots. Taya just rolled her eyes at her partner's act. Though, she had to admit, Naruto sure knew how to make the crowd go wild. No. "Shut up and look into my eyes." She yelled out angrily while trying to ignore that calls and wolf whistles from the crowd, whom obviously misunderstood her words. If possible, Naruto's grin got even wider and mocked blushed at her while pressing his fingers together resembling his old friend, Hinata. "Oh? Such boldness. My, I didn't take you to be that type. I must say, you are certainly unpredictable." Her patience was running thin and only got worse when she heard Bixlow laughing out loud. "Calm down," she told herself and immediately looked into his eyes. He suddenly froze still much to her pleasure and began petrifying. She had gotten him for humiliating her like this, the silence of the crowd made her smile. A Dijutsu, eye technique." Didn't expect that she heard a voice from behind her. Evergreen didn't want to turn around, but she had to confirm it. Slowly moving her head, she saw the blonde smiling widely at her in a calm demeanor. She was shocked. "Not bad, but I've had tons of practice with eye techniques. Such a thing won't work on me, Ms. Evergreen," he said while pointing to the one she had petrified earlier, only to see it dissolve into nothing. "What? My favorite technique. Kage Bunshin, Shadow Clone," he said, proudly presenting the move that had won him thousands of battles in the past. Directing his eyes to avoid her petrifying gaze, he used his magic to send vibrations through the air as a method to keep track of her with radar-like efficiency. Thank you. Shikamaru. His two friends had taught him this move as a way to fight Uchiha Sasuke Sharingan. Not willing to be a sitting duck, Evergreen flew into the air again and tried another of her attacks. Getting behind him, she charged him with fierce speed. Fairy machine gun. Leprechaun. Raising her arms, she brought them down in an X and unleashed a huge amount of magical needles at him, hoping to beat him in an instant. Naruto sighed at her predictability and twitched his arm subtly. Page Aisha, shadow projection. The blonde commanded the shadows to shield him from the attack with a dome-like figure. Once the needles got to him, they were instantly sucked into the void instantaneously. Evergreen widened her eyes again. "It's due. St like last time." He finished her thoughts quickly. He pointed behind her and opened the other projection door, resulting in Evergreen's own attack flying towards her. Unable to avoid it, she braced herself and took the attack. As soon as the attack finished, she dropped to the floor silently. She was out like a light the moment she hit the ground, which didn't surprise anybody. Makarov looked at the girl whom was unable to move and decided to call the match. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. The applause for him was thundering. Walking towards her, the blonde picked her up and brought her to the stadium infirmary. It was the least he could do after winning with such techniques. "It's not her fault, someone at her level couldn't possibly defeat me during the night." Sidelines. "Huh? I still don't get it," Natsu said out loud. Luxus resisted the urge to smack the rosy-headed kid upside the head for his lack of observant. Gray was also confused, he had not been able to grasp the technique Naruto had used. Gildarts on the other hand just smiled. What Luxus told me and the old man, that technique was originally used for teleportation and now he's using it as a defensive counter-attack. Banishing anything that enters the void then redirects it towards the caster with double the power. In a sense, it's like a mirror. The name is very fitting for such a tricky move, this Kage Aisha. Gildarts thought to himself, impressed by the blonde's ingenuity. That was incredible. Erza mumbled to herself, though Evergreen wasn't anywhere near S-class, she was still formidable, and not only was she soundly beaten, the victory was completely one-sided. Naruto hadn't shown any more than two techniques throughout the entire fight, not to mention he didn't look winded at all either. It was unsettling in a way. Winds? Shadows. The Dragon of the West is truly a fitting name for him. Mira exclaimed with glee, remembering the story her master had told her about the legendary Dragon of the West Tradantes of old. Of course, like most, she didn't believe them at all since such things were considered very mythical. Makarov knew better though. Indeed, his moves closely fits the descriptions of the ones Tradantes used in the stories. Makarov replied to her from the side. His suspicions were confirmed, though he was the only one that noticed. "So Tradantes has a student, does he? How shocking. What are you gonna do, Naruto? How do you plan on revealing to everyone your Dragon Slayer status?" The elder man thought to himself rhetorically, carefully eyeing the young blonde. "Looks like we have another S-class," Luxus whispered excitedly to himself. "Boy, Luxus, Natsu, you're next." Both fighters nodded and walked to the arena, equally excited. But Naruto, infirmary. Kage Aisha, shadow projection, is coming along quite nicely, but it's still no match for Dad's Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God. His technique is still much faster than mine. Even when I'm at night. Naruto's shadow technique was originally intended to copy the Yellow Flash's signature move. In a sense, instead of using a seal as a medium, he used shadows for it. Though he did have a vast knowledge of seals, it was still no match compared to those of his parents. Seals needed more than just skill to learn, it required a lot time and intelligence. Both of which the blonde didn't have earlier in his shinobi career. Naruto chuckled at the irony of all this. His former sensei, Kakashi, would have been proud at his own self-proclaimed copy ninjutsu. I guess I really am Kakashi's student. Though I don't need a Sharingan unlike him and Sasuke. Taijutsu, eye techniques, are so overrated haha except the Rinnegan of course. Those eyes are like cheat codes. He looked down at his opponent and grinned, she wasn't too difficult, but she was witty like the rumors had said. The blonde had not expected her to have such an eye technique in her arsenal, but luckily he thwarted it without too much hassle. He felt a little guilty, she was fighting her natural enemy. In reality, no one in the guild could beat him at night. He was nigh invincible when fighting with the darkness at his complete disposal. The only ones that could beat him here and now are Makarov or Gildarts and maybe Luxus if the blonde got careless, which was probably not gonna happen. Sorry Ms. Evergreen, but I have faced much stronger eye techniques. Two of which had the power to take over the world and one that nearly succeeded. He said quietly, ridding the horrible memories of the Manjutsu Sharingan and the terror it brought to his world. He was about to leave, but that was before multitudes of shadows caught his senses. The silhouette reminded him of Anbu chasing down its prey to a corner. Shaking off the shiver that entered him, he decided on a plan of action. Naruto wasn't sure of what it was, but if it gave him a bad feeling, then he'd act upon it. Page Bunshin, Shadow Clone. Without having to even form a seal, he summoned 3 clones to chase after the figures. Grunting, he walked off to inform his boss of the uninvited guests. Your student is quite skilled, Tradantes. Spoke a mic'd voice from above, the dragons were having their first official meeting since a millennia ago. They would often travel the world in secret to fulfill many different deeds, but once Tradantes announced his return, everyone decided to show up. Ahaha, he hasn't shown anything yet. Exclaimed the dragon of the west, whom was gloating every second about his pupil. Naruto had grown to such heights that most dragons in this room would fear him. The lower tier dragons made a mental note to stay away from Tradantes' prized pupil at all cost, not wanting to invoke his wrath. HMPH, well your student is powerful, mine has far more potential. Tradantes looked to his right and saw a being that sent shivers up the spines of nearly every self-respecting fire mage. Igneal, the fire dragon and brother to the king of dragons himself. Potential, potential, potential. You fools only look at what something could be. Tradantes roared with fury, scaring the wits out of the lower-ranked Dragunkins. What matters is the here and now. You look at the future and speak as if it is set in stone. My student has defied this and found his way to the top. You think that potential alone will defeat my student? The dragon of the west said as if it were a command, his magical powers rising to the top of his restraint. You were always a passionate one, yes, the potential of my student goes beyond yours by leaps and bounds. That is why I believe my student will become stronger. Igneal roared back, black flames suddenly arising from his claws. Tradantes laughed hysterically, confusing everyone in the vicinity. You think potential holds my student back? Tradantes asked out loud, laughing even harder when Igneal nodded with a look of confidence on his face. Then you are wrong. There is no such thing as a limit on strength. Strength is not counted by something trivial like mere skill or potential. The dragon was about to continue until a powerful aura crept its way towards him. Turning his head, the dragon of the west came face to face with a being that even he didn't expect. Zahaha, must you always make a scene every time to come here? Especially on something so stupid. Tradantes smirked. The dragon behind him was the sole reason Zarif didn't attack the land of Dragunkins. He was a dark shade of grey with wings that spread as far as small lakes. His eyes were nearly pitch black with no pupils whatsoever, and the being also wore a gemstone on the top of its forehead. Well, if it isn't the dragon of the moon himself. When did you wake up? Aphelion. After I heard a ruckus about the great Tradantes returning, I couldn't help myself. Don't want my brother to return unwelcomed now. Aphelion said with blatant sarcasm. Yes of course Tradantes growled back. Now. Let's see this boy in action. I want to see just how powerful this human is, seeing as he sees it fit to take your name. The dragon of the west smirked widely. He might just achieve it, my title that is after all, not just anyone can call themselves the dragon of the west. Stadium. That's the gist of it. Makarov nodded and waved his hands, indicating that he would take care of it. Naruto had told him of the situation and asked him to prepare for it accordingly. The master, not knowing what exactly the problem was, suggested a wait-and-see approach. Let's just see for now. Besides, this is supposed to be a fun little event. Don't worry too much my boy. Naruto nodded and returned to the sidelines where the rest of his fellow mages were. All eyes were on him like a fly to a light. The fight had made them all more aware of his magical level, as he didn't bother hiding his strength any longer. The blonde seemed more powerful than before. Though it was quite a shock to Natsu, Gray and Bixlow, because they had not expected him to be anywhere near as strong as he showed. The S-class mages on the other hand knew better due to their superior insight. The job didn't take you to be a shadows guy though. Mira said with amusement laced in her voice. Naruto chuckled at the remark as he knew many would agree with her. Ma, I'll take that as a compliment. I didn't mean to use those techniques yet, but I wanted to save my energy. That's a good idea because Luxus won't have too much trouble with Natsu. Fried said from his side, pointing at the two who were fighting. Naruto kept a close eye on his fellow Dragonslayer, eager to see his techniques. Naruto had never met any other Dragonslayer before seeing as he's only been in this world for only a few years. Show me your power, student of Igneal. Stadium ground. Peryu no Tekken, Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. Natsu yelled as he charged the older blonde with vigor. Luxus sided him and clapped his hands together whilst charging his magical energy. Ekureki, Thunderclap. A powerful, lightning-infused shell branched out and shocked the rosy teen, knocking him back to where he once stood. Luxus shook his head in disappointment. Natsu, 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 always so predictable. Come on, show me something new. He roared and shot a wisp of lightning at him. Dodging the attack by a mere centimeter, he drew his breath in and prepared his signature attack. Sidelines. Could this be? Naruto said to himself as he observed the younger child. Of course, being a fellow Dragonslayer, he knew what the next attack would be. Stadium ground. Peryu no Hoko. Fire Dragon's roar. An unearthly amount of fire breathed from his mouth and launched itself at Luxus's mediocre speed. The elder teen smirked and jumped cleanly out of the way. Not bad, but it's not good enough. He punched the ground and out erupted streaks of lightnings. Brahman. Lightning ripple. The attack struck Natsu head-on and dealt severe damage to him. Falling to the ground in a heap, Natsu blacked out. Winner. Luxus Dreyer. Makarov nodded and signaled someone to bring Natsu to the infirmary. Sidelines. Naruto couldn't help but feel a stinge of disappointment hit him after witnessing the fight's abrupt ending. He had expected the young teen's roar to be a bit more effective, but apparently that wasn't the case as it was slow and easily avoidable. He does have potential though, but that won't be enough to defeat a real-life dragon, maybe I'll train him up a bit after this. He thought to himself, finding the idea to be a bit appealing. Like always. Gray laughed from beside him, though he couldn't help but feel sorry for his rival. Luxus was one of the best mages in the guild and it was obvious that he didn't stand a chance. He wasn't terrible. Naruto stated, defending his fellow Dragonslayer. I agree, in a few years, Natsu will be much better. But right now, Luxus has every advantage over him. Erza told them apathetically, though if one were to look closely, she was actually studying the blonde from the corner of her eye. Sighing, she walked up to the stadium grounds with a silent glint in her eyes. My turn. Next chapter. The Titania descends. Stadium. Walking down to the stadium with elegance only present within queens themselves, the Titania Erza Scarlet watched as all eyes came on her. She was beyond famous in Magnolia and was often the role model for all young, aspiring sorceresses. Her magic was beautiful to many and a nightmare to others. Her hair whisked around like leaves during a spring breeze as her eyes focused on one single goal. Victory. Ready, Bixlow? Her opponent, Bixlow of the Raijinshu, nodded and smirked arrogantly at her. The look ticked her off a bit, but she let it go, opting to crush his skull to the ground rather than saying anything. She was a woman of action, her skills mightier than most men. Yeah. Get ready to eat the dust, girlie. You got no chance today. Gasps were heard from the crowd and many glares from the local sorceresses targeted the masked man. Bixlow swallowed nervously, not from the glares from the others, but rather from the person in front of him. Erza's eyes darkened considerably and she subconsciously produced a wild amount of killer intent, freaking out most of the competitors excluding Naruto, Luxus and Gildarts. Those three just shook their heads inwardly while thinking the same thing. What a stupid thing to say in front of her. So you think that because I am a woman that I will lose just like that? She said with a sickening demeanor. Bixlow shivered under her gaze. And no, I didn't mean it like that. Before he could finish, she charged him with speed that surpassed most jounin. Exquip. Gunner 1, she exclaimed as she ran toward a spear that radiated nothing but power, poofed into her hand seemingly out of nowhere. The pole was dark blue with a snake design that seemed to go all the way to the top. The blade was beautifully designed, the color was pitch black and had a silver lining that seemed to go from the mouth of the pole to its tip. Bixlow, whom was shocked by the speed of her approach, quickly summoned his puppets to defend him. He had them shoot lasers at her from all directions in an attempt to slow her down, but failed as Erza closed the distance between them without breaking a sweat. The fiery sorceress, whose eyes were blazing like a demon, wielded the spear and fired bullet-speed lunges against the man without a hint of mercy on her face. Zantetsuken. Iron-cutting blade, Erza pierced his armor without much trouble, causing the masked man to scream in pain. Hitting him in multiple places, including the more sensitive areas. Erza watched in delight as he began to roll on the ground begging for mercy. Makarov shivered as he glanced at the young woman's sadistic grin and raised his hands, signaling the end of the match. Winner. Erza Scarlet. The crowd erupted in cheers for the young mage, only the men felt pity for the men that just got violated in several places. Sidelines. All the men who were watching the match had pale faces. Some of them even praying to Kami to forgive his foolishness, Naruto, some were planning on giving him a well-deserved vacation, Luxus, some were just looking at him with pure pity and amusement, Gildarts, and some that just looked terrified, Gray. Noticing all the looks, Mira laughed without any hint of pity towards the masked man. That was entertaining to watch. She spoke with laced amusement and foreboding, satisfied when she saw the shivers that ran down their spines. Yeah for you, scary chick. Naruto mumbled, still pale from the attack. Did you say something? Mira said darkly facing Naruto, whom shook his head with rapid speed. Narrowing her eyes, she started to approach him with a scent of killer intent behind her, causing Naruto to sweat comically at the sight. That's so, Mira-chan, it seems you're up next. Gildarts quickly exclaimed, earning a grateful look from the younger blonde next to him. Oh yeah. And like that, she forgot about Naruto and jumped down to the stadium waiting for her match to start. Thanks man, he said in relief. Gildarts patted him on the back. No problem kid, no problem. Neither noticed Gray walking down with a frightened look on his poor 14-year-old frame. Stadium ground. Gray vs Mirahin begin. Makarov said, raising his hands to signal the start of the match. Gray looked at her with so much fear that the woman herself could feel it. She smirked and gave him a glare, packed with malicious killer intent. He sweated coldly and subconsciously thought back to the times of when he was still with his master. On how to be one with nature and her multiple lessons on dealing with fear. Face it head on. He heard his master, yell at him mentally. Fear is not a weakness, it's a detector. Use it. She had said to him the week before Deliora attacked. He didn't listen to her at the time and it cost him the best master in the world. He looked at the woman in front of him and felt the weight of the world falling on him. She was powerful but not invincible. He stared back, courage returning to his frame. Mira smirked at the younger boy. Not bad Gray. Now, let's get this party started. She rushed him at high speeds in an attempt to bring the fight to close range. Not willing to let that happen, he quickly placed his fisted hands into his palms. Ice make. Ramparts. Spiked ice sculptures suddenly erupted from the grounds, stopping Mira in her tracks. Unfazed by the development, she quickly gathered a ton of magical energy of her own. Devil's right hand. Her right hand suddenly transformed into a devil-like feature, freaking out many people who were new to the sight. Grinning darkly, she punched straight through Gray's wall and proceeded to rush towards the boy again. He was prepared as he settled into another stance. Ice make. Shuriken. Forming numerous stars in his hands, he shot all of them towards the trapped sorceress. She smirked and used her transformed arm to swat them all away without any hassle, surprising Gray easily. Demon skin is only second to dragon skin you know. She said smugly, making Gray switch attack tactics. Doesn't matter. I'll just freeze ya. Gathering his magic, he focused on the broken ice and reformed it back to his likings. Mira was suddenly aware of the ice surrounding her again and raised her brow. Ice make. Prison. The ice at Gray's disposal formed into an intricate four-sided cage that looked as if it were carved in every direction. Dropping to his knees, Gray let out a self-satisfied grin at his masterpiece. It was his most powerful trap technique, nothing short of a monster could destroy that thing. Sidelines. That kid is really good. Naruto commented, looking at the ice surrounding the battlefield in awe. The last time he fought a true ice user was Haku, the man that taught him the true path of a shinobi. Whilst Gray's techniques were flashy and powerful, Haku had more finesse and efficiency. Nonetheless, the blonde was very impressed by the boy's talent. Indeed. Gildarts agreed, also a bit surprised by his wit in battle. Gray has always been talented. His master, was named as one of the 10 saints after she passed away fighting the devil Deliora. Erza said, catching Naruto's interest. He knew of Erza's legendary final battle from his master, but he didn't know of her student. Wow, I didn't know she had a pupil. Erza agreed, having felt the same way when she found out from the boy himself. Yeah, he's good but nowhere near his master yet. Look, the fight ain't over yet. Luxus commented. They looked and saw water gathering in Mira's hands, seemingly out of nowhere. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight. Impossible. That's just like the Nidaime. He thought with shock, having heard that it was rare for someone to draw raw hydrogen atoms from the atmosphere. Never in his life did he think he'd meet anyone who'd be able to do the same. Back to the fight. You've done good Gray. She said out loud making Gray become confused at her tone. It was calmer and more sinister than before. He looked at her and was frightened when she seemed to be in her half-transformed state. The entire right side of her body was sporting numerous markings that seemed to just fit with the skin change. But this is the end. Her voice changed entirely, scaring the younger boy considerably. Vizupurusu, water pulse, condensing the water in her hands to the point of it being a cannon, she shot it at high speeds towards the cage, breaking it to pieces, and hit Gray head on and knocked him back to the wall. The younger boy dropped to the floor, out like a light. Returning back into her regular form, she walked up to Gray and brought him to the infirmary out of mere respect. "Not bad at all, kid." Clapping at the sportsmanship shown by the woman, the standing ovation was massive as they had not expected such a good fight. No one expected Gray to put up the fight at all. Winner. Mirahin. Sidelines. Everyone looked at Gray with as much respect as they would give for the fight he put up. What can they say, the boy had put up a valiant effort, but Mira was just on a different level. She hadn't really gone all out, but at least some effort was put into the fight. Out of nowhere, Naruto began chuckling. "What's so funny?" Erza asked him, making the eyes of the rest look at him. "Those two are definitely rivals. Natsu and Gray. Fire and ice. Bronze and brains. So cliché." He spoke as if from experience. It reminded him of his own rivalry with a certain duck-haired idiot. Hopefully, it won't end up the same way, he thought to himself. Yeah, those little rascals just won't shut up at times though. Luxus sneered, but he did sound like he genuinely cared. A little. The rest nodded and agreed with the two. Erza looked at Fried and smiled with sympathy. "Try your best." Now was the match that everyone knew whom the victor would be. Stadium ground. Fried vs Gildarts. Begin. There was no bets on this match due to no one having the guts to bet against a bearded veteran named Gildarts. Not even with Naruto's insane luck. "Hey, don't look at me like that. Try your best, Fried," the veteran said, putting his hands up in a way to assure the other man of his abilities. Fried on the other hand, shook his head. "No, you are without a doubt going to win. But like you said, I will do my best." Gildarts sighed in relief, not wanting to hurt the other man's pride. No one knew of his terrible dilemma that was soundly beating everyone without hurting their feelings. "Cool." He gave him a thumbs up that seemed a bit old-fashioned. Fried nodded and immediately gathered magical energy around his hands and slammed it to the ground. Numerous letters runes started forming from where his palms were, intriguing the crowd whom hadn't seen it before. "Those whom are within thy circle shan't be able to cast magic. Those whom are within thy circle and are over the years of 35 shall not be able to leave within thy permission." Fried chanted as if setting rules on the table. Gildarts looked on, fascinated by the man's magic, and opted to just watch him do his thing. Sidelines. Gildarts was not the only one that was interested by the enchantments. A circle was being formed through countless words and magical ink. It vaguely reminded Naruto of his own sealing techniques that he had often used against tougher opponents. It intrigued the sage to no end by the mere sight of it forming. "What is that?" he asked curiously. It was Luxus that responded. "Enchantments. They are Fried's specialty, he can write any rules and set them on the ground. Anyone within the circle must follow its rules or face punishment. Not even Gildarts can break them without consequence," he said, making Naruto slightly raise his eyes with recognition. "That's awesome," Naruto replied, remembering it when he went through the guild registry. He silently cursed his master for not telling him of such a thing. Back to the battle. Everyone looked as a complete circle surrounded both fighters. Many encoded words, runes written on all sides. Gildarts, whom already knew the secret to its build, just watched as Fried drew his sword. "When you are in here, no magic will be cast. It may not be my best enchant, but it'll have to do, and I can't have you being impatient now." The long-haired man charged the veteran mage with vigor. He launched numerous lunges and slashes, but only to miss by an inch each time. Though he looked slow, Gildarts was still more experienced and could easily predict the movement of the sword. The guild ace smiled as he watched the younger man try to beat him with his strategy. "He's preventing me from leaving and using magic. It's not a bad idea really having enough." He grabbed the sword with his bare hands and bent it without much effort. Fried widened his eyes and jumped back in alert. How? He looked at his beloved rapier in shock. It was his favorite sword and it cost him a whole A-rank mission worth of pay. Oh sorry, was that expensive?" "I'll pay for it," Gildarts said, trying to defend himself with a mask of obliviousness. Fried knew better though, and sighed. "I thought this would work, but I guess I have no choice." He brought his palms to the ground and dispelled the barrier, returning both uses of their magic. Not wasting any time, Fried immediately casted another spell. "Cancelled it, huh?" Gildarts mused. "Yami no creature. Darkness. Writing of darkness. Darkness," he exclaimed as numerous runes were written on his own body. Transforming his body into a demon with horns and a strong muscle build, he also grew white demonic hair and looked as he went through a takeover like Elfman. You've gotten better," Gildarts remarked, not even worried as Fried charged him. As the demon-entranced fright approached, the fairy tale veteran nonchalantly crushed him aside with a mere hand flick. The demonic form receded and it seemed to all that Fried was instantly defeated. They were right. Winner. Gildarts' cry. Sidelines. Damn. Was all Naruto had to say about the fight. Not only was it completely dominating, but it had shown nearly nothing of Gildarts' true powers. While he himself hadn't revealed his true Dragon Slayer powers, it was still important to know of your opponent's moves. It reminds me of Pain's Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push. But the possibilities are all over the place. He sighed in dismay. Well, looks like we got a 10-minute break. I'm gonna go see Kana and Lucky. With that Naruto left, leaving the other S-classed mages to discuss among themselves. Once he was out of the vicinity, the master walked in. So it's Naruto, Luxus, Erza, Mira and Gildarts, huh? Makarov said as he approached his best mages excluding the blonde Jinchuriki. Yeah, should be interesting this time around. Luxus said from where he stood, arms crossed. Definitely. Where's Naruto? He asked, having seen the blonde leave just before he entered. Erza spoke up. He went to see his teammates, Kana and Lucky. Ah, I see. Anyways, how are you all feeling? The mages all looked at one another and nodded, having no problems at all. Though the same couldn't be said for their opponents. We're fine and Naruto wasn't even sweating. Why do you ask? The old man smiled. Just wanted this match to be a good one, I guess. Crowd's going crazy as you can see. He pointed to the stands, everyone's eyes followed. Only to sweat drop when they saw Naruto struggle to get away from his newly made fangirls. They were hounding him like a dog and it's bone, completely obsessed. Gildarts chuckled. Well, after the show he put up. It's not too surprising. He smiled, making everyone nod. The blonde was an excellent crowd pleaser indeed. He's strong, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a Dragon Slayer. He acts like one. Luxus suddenly said without thinking, making Makarov widen his eyes by a fraction. What do you mean by he acts like one? I mean, sure he's a bit loud like Natsu, but he sure as hell ain't headstrong and bashful. Luxus shook his head at her statement. His little tipsy act. It kinda reminds me of a sleeping dragon that's ready to pounce on anything that threatens him. He's dangerous to approach if his magic was any indication. Gildarts chuckled at Luxus's declaration. I don't think it was an act. That brought a few laughs, but they all knew it was true. But yeah, Luxus is right. He's difficult to approach in battle. You'd need an attack that gets around his shadows, and not to mention he's very quick with his shadow manipulation. Erza nodded in agreement. It seems like fighting him one-on-one will only be foolish. He's hiding something and it's big. Everyone nodded except Mira who looked at her rival with interest. Are you saying that you can't beat him without help? She spoke, eyeing the red-haired girl. Indeed, he seems very powerful. He's definitely on the mid to high tier of S rank like Luxus. Said man smirked. Nah, that might be pushing it a bit. I mean come on, he took at least 4 minutes to beat Evergreen herself. He replied making Erza shake her head in the negative. No, he wasn't even trying. His magical power didn't even lower and it seemed as if he just wanted to put up a show. Mira nodded, having felt the same. He's definitely no punk. Kana told me that he finished air ranks without breaking a sweat. Also remember the hints he's been giving about his power. Winds. Shadows. He fights like that dragon from the old myths. She said, sending shivers of excitement down their spines. Indeed, it's a very old story. The dragon of the west, Tradantes would descend from the sky and skewer anything that would trespass on his home. He would use his majestic wings to create numerous hurricanes and use shadows to sow seeds of destruction within the enemy ranks. Makarov added to put in the scare only to fail as Luxus started laughing. Aren't those just little ghost stories? To his surprise, the elder man shook his head. I assure you, they are very real. Silence reigned in the air, a sign that they were all in deep thought. Makarov grinned inwardly. I see well, breaks over it seems. The blonde said, still a bit shaken by the development. Well, what do you know? You're right, we were talking for a while. Makarov mused as he checked his wristwatch. 10 minutes had indeed passed. Let your butts down there and put up a show. 10 minutes before, with Naruto. A sigh of relief could be heard if one were to look closely at Naruto's position. He had just avoided his new fangirls by a mere second using Jiraiya's famous transparency technique. The blonde was now praying to the old hermit with all his gratitude. Saying things like I hope you got the harem you wanted and I hope Tsunade Bachan stops hitting you, said hermit was currently envious of his former student's luck from where he was watching in heaven. They're gone. Now where are Kana and Lucky? His eyes combed the crowd carefully. Spotting the brunette near the top sitting next to a certain violet-haired woman. He sneakily crept up from behind them, telling the other guild members to hush on the way, a grin adjourning his features. Boo. A shriek could be heard from where they sat. Kana and Lucky turned around and saw Naruto cracking up at their foolishness. Gaining a tick, she proceeded to slam his face to her elbows, which elicited laughter from the locals. Damn it. Don't do that in public. Kana mock glared him, making Lucky giggle from the side. Sorry it was my inner prankster. He grinned sheepishly, so enjoying the show. The sudden glare turned into one of a grin. Nodding, she proceeded to lightly punch him on the shoulders. Yeah. Evergreen didn't look too well after the fight though. Why didn't you go all out? Naruto shrugged and answered half-heartedly. Oh no, didn't feel the need to. Why do you ask? Well, you never go all out. I wanna see my drinking buddies full strength you know. Naruto chuckled at the comment. And you never seem to fight seriously at all during missions. You just seem bored most of the time. Lucky added. Naruto sighed, it was true. He just didn't seem to enjoy fighting weak opponents. Well, it won't be a problem now I'm in a match with all the S-class fighters in the guild. They look tough, especially Gildarts. Dude didn't break a sweat fighting that fried guy. Don't get your hopes up Naruto. You're strong, very strong, but Gildarts is on a level of his own. Even the master would have a hard time beating him at full power. The man became the ace of the guild when he single-handedly discarded 5 S-class criminals at once. 5 very notorious, very powerful villains and all of whom were leaders of famous dark guilds. Naruto could only nod, it wasn't too hard to believe that in his opinion. But the amount of raw power that surrounds him, it's not too surprising. The man's like a walking beacon of pure power to my senses. Need I mention that he seems to have perfect control over it all? Geez. I wish I had that kind of control when I was a kid. He thought to himself. Don't worry too much about me I have a plan. His teammates looked at him curiously. And what's that? They asked simultaneously. Well, I figure that Luxus, Mira and Erza are all more interested in fighting Gildarts, so I'll just let them wear him out first. Then I'll jump in and kick butt. He said, whilst thinking of something else as an afterthought. I hope that he pulls a Shikamaru and gives up. Haha good luck with that. They aren't S-classed because they're just strong you know. They'll figure out your plot. Kana replied laughing. We'll see. Well, looks like it's time. Naruto said when he saw everyone returning to the field. He nodded to his teammates, both wishing him the best of luck. Browns. Need I explain the rules? They all shook their heads in the negative. Then best of luck to you all. He said eyeing the younger members in particular. Facing the crowd, he used a magic to super enhance his voice to project his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the final match. A 5-sided super battle elimination match. He aimed his hands at the resident blonde teen. We have our competitors. On one corner we have the Dragon of the West, Uzumaki Naruto. Thundering applause could be heard, most of which were from his fangirls. A lot of squeals and marriage proposals could be heard in the air, embarrassing the resident blonde. On another corner stands our very own Luxus Draer. The S-classed magician. More applause were heard bringing a smirk to his face. And here we have Erza the Titania. This time, there were marriage proposal from guys that could be heard in the air. There was also some from the women too surprisingly. Warahin the devil. The stadium started stomping their feet to intensify the excitement in the air. And we have our one and only Gildarts. And with that, everyone got to their feet and started screaming for the competitors to start, growing impatient. And now Makarov drew out the statement a bit longer, making the crowd grow even more impatient. Waiting for the right time, the tension cut as he brought his hands down to signal the start. Begin. Fight. Closing his eyes, Naruto smirked when he noticed every other person approach Gildarts rather than himself. So he thought anyways. The footsteps were growing increasingly louder, and before he knew it, Erza jumped him from afar as Luxus shot a lightning bolt at him. Naruto had to dodge the attacks quickly as they were quick and efficient. Breaking out of his stupor, he grew a tick mark and kicked Erza back so he could get some space. She flew back towards the wall, shocking everyone by the sheer velocity of Naruto's attack. What the hell? Y'all were supposed to attack Gildarts. He yelled, completely out of character. Taya, whom listened in on his plan, snickered at him. The red-headed woman got back up and looked at him, wincing at the slight pain she was in. What makes you say that? Erza and Luxus said at the same time. Well, you guys were so excited about fighting Gildarts. Now you're attacking me? Hypocrites. All of you. He pointed out like a monkey, making his teammates in the crowd chuckle. Well, there was a little theory we came up back during the break. Erza started, narrowing her eyes at him. And well, we agreed to satisfy our curiosity before fighting the big man. Luxus finished, smirking as he saw Mira approach from behind him. So is it true? She asked him. Naruto grew confused, not knowing what they were talking about. What? That you're a Dragon Slayer? Infirmary, few minutes prior. Come on Gray. I wanna watch the last match. Yelling was heard from the infirmary. A certain rosy-haired Dragon Slayer had just awoken from his fight and smacked Gray out of his dream. Where am I? He said, rubbing his eyes. In the infirmary. That means you lost. Ha 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 ha. Gray grew a tick mark on his head and smacked the rosy-haired teen upside the head. If you're in here then that means you lost too, you idiot. He screamed back, not noticing the killer intent from behind both of them. Will you both shut up, I'm trying to sleep. This time it was Evergreen that screamed at them. Satisfied by their silence, she proceeded to plop back into bed and rest peacefully. Crazy Lady Gray mumbled, eliciting a chuckle from beside him. The raven-haired boy tilted his head and saw another member of the Raijinshu, Fried, smiling down at him. Don't mind her, Gray, she is still upset over her defeat. Shut up. Anyways, let's go watch. It should be getting started anytime now. Natsu and Gray nodded and followed the limping mage out of the room. Are you okay? They asked as they walked down the hall. Don't mind me. I'm blessed to even be able to walk after fighting Gildarts. They nodded in agreement. So who's in the finals? Natsu asked innocently, making Fried go into thought temporarily. Naruto, Luxus, Erza, Mira and Gildarts. He said as they approached the exit. They saw Luxus, Mira and Erza approaching Naruto like predator on prey. So is it true? They heard Mira say with a curiosity laced in her voice. What? Replied the blonde. At you're a Dragon Slayer? Eyes widened across the stadium with Natsu as the widest. Naruto looked at her then at Makarov. Seeing his expression, Naruto could only sigh in resignation. So that cat's out of the bag, he thought. What makes you say that? Erza shook her head. Your nickname and the way you act. Your powers as well. It all points to one thing, Mira stated with the other two agreeing. Is that so? He smiled and closed his eyes. Only to reopen them as it changed from vibrant blue to pitch black with red slits like his master, surprising most of the crowd. What Natsu said from his position, confused to the situation. They had just accused someone of being like him. Why don't I just show you? He said sinisterly, sucking his breath in a familiar manner to Natsu earlier. Alarms went off in all their heads as they saw so, and without wasting a second jumped out of the way right before the newly found out Dragon Slayer unleashed a rip-roaring amount of power from his mouth. Yoryu no Hoko. Night Dragon's Howl. What if Naruto 100-year quest in a fairy tale end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.